Oh, hats off to the Princess Trust. Yeah. Prince Charles. I've had so much respect for Prince Charles. People see him.
Just about.
People say some negative things about Prince Charles. You know, when you consider what he's done for the young community, people seem to not know it.
This is Simon Cranstock, he's a local councillor. But not the street area. But Charles actually started in the street area where the enterprise level is.
Okay. With Howard. Yes, he's still there. Still there. He's on the slopes.
The audience.
You're keeping it busy, are you? Where are you?
I'm sitting there.
But you have the on there before originally so what are you most to do probably?
No, go to the studio, but I have to go in. What do you do now, Charles?
I work at the university.
In Oxford?
Actually, yes, work in the paper at the university, work in the Growth Hub for new businesses.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so I've linked up to the Growth Hub recently. Where is it? Growth Hub Gloucester.
Yeah.
You can now confirm the application for the SME recovery and kickstarting tourism grants will open.
Actually, what? We've got enough money to 60 grants. I think it's
1,600.
they knew from the beginning that's what that is.
It's all the charity money has dried up, hasn't it? You can't collect it, so you get limbo there.
Things like a marathon, run a marathon, millions.
Completely. And it's the same with everything, isn't it, really?
What are you picking up then from? People you know,
Well, they're all looking for money.
did they get grants from the city council?
They did.
Because they were distributing this.
It was done and dusted anyway. I mean, as councillors, we wouldn't have known anyway because they've done it directly with the officers. But yeah, they're quite good as well. Monday's going to be even worse. Monday, only 6 people.
Monday's just my birthday.
Oh,
So we've had a good family party.
look, Jen, you're going to have
Are you
Sunday.
going to have it before Monday? How about on Sunday?
No, unfortunately, my son went around. So we're going to do it in two phases.
It's going to cost you more money there.
Never known anything like this.
No, never. It's not likely to finish either, is it? The way it's going.
No, we didn't. I mean, personally, we throw on Christmas as a family celebration, and I don't know if you know.
Even with the Christmas parties, you know, that
Yeah.
would be going down the park.
Although, if we have a Christmas party in the restaurant, we're okay. If we have it at home, we can't.
Ah, that's right. Get the family to pay them, you're okay then.
I'll try.
Don't think it would, would it? Sometimes it doesn't work.
Where do you live now, Charles?
I live in Prestbury.
Prestbury,
Yeah.
Cheltenham.
Yeah. Just on the edge of the race course.
Which side?
Do you often Linton Avenue?
Which one?
Linton Avenue?
I know exactly. Yeah, I know. On the left.
We're on Apple Orchard, which is just off Linton on the right, the last one on the right.
Linden Avenue.
Which used to be a gap before the train went
I was impressed really because I live on the other side of the business. And so I was at the racehorse down the little alleyway near Alton Road, and made my way round.
Just during the week we were there, it was last week.
So this was this year?
Yeah. So we've done the same for next year already. Whether it should be on we don't know.
So it's just of how much you get from your rental compared to how much you spend. Is it the same? Do you make it up?
I haven't seen you for ages because of all the time in the room. All this stuff just up and cancelled.
Yeah, exactly this way.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
So yeah, you can actually if you want
We've been staying busy anyway during as a councillor area. Instead of telling them to do it, show them whether they do it or not.
You can't force anyone.
which restaurant did you go?
The same thing.
You're there for the right reason. Rather than just, how do you say, for your own benefit.
Yes.
You recommend
Feed is for your own benefit.
What I'm hungry at the moment is quite good.
You can look to the
again just before
Oh, no.
could have just been about 9.
Yes.
And then this eat out
Yes. I went to the grocery in town. The food just went downhill. Yeah, I went back 5 times. Never felt so happy. And that's the big place to eat there. So they come to us to eat.
Email,
Yeah.
phone.
I don't know what post-COVID and
Maybe know that.
what's stuff there.
But the thing what we thought we did in Twins Arms next time is actually yeah.
Looking at it,
Cute.
Yeah.
is it, can you do this? What can I do this now?
Makes a difference.
Yeah, can you do this now?
I'd like to do that
Yeah, but
next time.
we miss it. Just
There's an Italian restaurant
do this down here.
Helio on the roundabout.
She understands.
Oh, I know. Just the other side. So if you're driving up the
Yeah.
Where the Ivy is, opposite where Cook Brasserie is, and then you've got the Italian in the middle.
In fear.
That is lovely. In terms of
First time, actually, we've had an incentive for older apprentices and older workers as
So that incentive, how many people in the room were aware of that? That if, yeah, quite a lot of people were aware of that. I'm going to turn to Ian Mean now, who is now representing Business West, the Chamber of Commerce in Gloucestershire, a former apprentice himself, who edited our local newspaper, the Gloucester Citizen, for many years. Ian, you've always championed apprenticeships. I suspect you've got a couple of hard questions up your sleeves for the Minister. Ian Mean.
Thanks, Minister. A couple of questions, really. I think you need to do a lot more for SMEs on the levy. That is really not understood by them.
Yeah.
It's quite complex, and if you're running in Gloucestershire a small engineering firm, we've got many of them, you know, complexity stands in the way of going forward. But many of those businesses, in my view, would like to take on an apprentice. Question two, we all think that Kickstart is a great innovative scheme, but how are you going to progress that to apprenticeships? Because that is what we need. I mean, we've got a tsunami of jobs coming down the line. It's going to be really challenging here. So how can we convert those people on Kickstart to proper apprenticeships?
I'm hoping that the move that we've done recently, which is to put all SMEs on the new apprenticeship service, is going to make it easier in terms of the whole sort of, you know, how you use the system. The system does work quite well. I've used it myself. I think the big challenge is the awareness, which is why events like this are absolutely vital. And, you know, we just can't say it enough, really. There's so much going on in people's lives, so many decisions, we're all thinking about hand sanitizers, one-way systems, masks, and how we shake hands, or, you know, all those things, as well as, you know, all of the opportunities and all the business constraints. So you can just never say it enough, because I think the system should work more easily than it did, but still there's a lot of people who don't know about it, and even in this room there's a lot of people who didn't know about the incentives. The scheme, so we've got three things we announced in the plan for jobs, which is to try and sort of tide us over at this period. The first is the Kickstart scheme, which is 6 months paid at minimum wage to get people taken on, to get them a chance to get that work experience, to actually get into the workplace. But very much we're hoping that that will be a leader to an apprenticeship, and then an apprenticeship can follow a Kickstarter scheme. We have another scheme as well, which is traineeships. And traineeships are a bit more flexible. They can include a qualification, they can include training. They were originally designed for those that were further away from the workplace, but we've expanded it to be basically anybody up to the age of 24, I think. And that is there to be able to do a pre-apprenticeship. If you're not quite ready to make the decision for an apprenticeship, you get an incentive for £1,000 for this, but it gives you a bit more flexibility. And also if the individual needs a bit more support to be able to take on apprenticeship, then the traineeship can be used as a pre-apprenticeship. So we're hoping the combination of these things will help different people at different stages and different businesses to make different careers choices. So that's the hope that we will do. And of course we'll keep it under review, we'll be flexible, because the reason we've done all that is because we want to absolutely make sure that we support people through this period, so that we do not end up with high levels of youth unemployment, because that is something we absolutely don't want, and we don't need to have it, because there's so many skills gaps if people get the training in the right areas, in the right place. So that's what we need to focus on.
Thank you, Minister. That's so important to all of us, because youth unemployment, when I became MP 10 years ago in this city, was unbelievably high. It came down very sharply over the years, and we had record employment only 6 months ago, and we want to get back there as soon as possible. And I think this is a good moment to bring in a couple of young people who've joined us here today. Matthew, I'm wandering towards you. You're a current apprentice with GE Aviation. Can you tell us a little bit, I think you can lower the mask once I've given you the mic, about how you got the apprenticeship, what you learnt about it at school, and whether teachers were encouraging it, and what sort of messages you think people at schools now need to get about apprenticeships. Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you, Minister. So, from my personal experience, I come from a working background, so I'm not straight out of school. When I was at school, it was very much all university. It was very much you must complete UCAS, you must go down this route, take A-levels and go into university, get a degree. I took a very different approach, so I left sixth form after the first year. I then went to Cambridge College to study a level 3 extended diploma in engineering. That's when the apprenticeship scheme became more apparent to me that that was an option. So once that was complete, I left, went travelling, tried to find what I wanted to do, and then I found the apprenticeship at GE Aviation over here in Gloucester. So I moved away from Bishop Stortford and came to work here full time. So the fact that I've moved across the country to and completely relocated for a job really says how amazing these apprenticeship opportunities are. So yes, thank you.
And Matthew, can you give us all an idea of where your colleagues at GE Aviation are from? Are most of them from schools around Gloucestershire or colleges? Or like you, have they travelled a long way in order to find that opportunity?
So there is a wide diversity as to backgrounds where everyone's from. Originally, when the apprenticeship was quite small, I think everyone was quite localised from local schools, local academies, whereas now we're trying to reach out a little bit further abroad. So for example, myself, I'm about 3 hours away. We have some older apprentices are from Scotland, Glasgow, for example. We have a couple from Dudley. So yes, the recruitment team are really trying to push out further now.
So this is one of the points, Minister, about the lift-off event today, that all MPs around Gloucestershire are striving with all the employers to try and make sure that this, what Ian Mean has just called the employment tsunami, does not affect our young too much. And the key thing, therefore, is to identify these opportunities and make sure that young people in Gloucestershire seize them. Because nowadays people will travel a long way, there's a lot of competition out there, and we want to try and make sure that people here get them. I'm going to turn, before we ask the Minister to comment on this now, to Taylor, who was at Newent Community School in the Forest and is now doing one of these cyber security degree apprenticeships. Taylor, can you share with us a little bit about what got you into the world of apprenticeships and whether you think other young people are aware enough of the opportunities that could be out there and how to go about getting them?
Thank you. So my current situation is I was originally I went to Newent Community School in Sixth Form Centre, so this was when I was 16. Left that to do my level 3 apprenticeship in as an IT infrastructure technician, and then I finished that 6 months early to then move on to the degree apprenticeship, which I'm currently studying at Glasgow. And well, one of the challenges is taking on 17, sorry. We've got people in the class who are like 40. Well, there's a large range of people. Not saying that 40 is old.
It's not now.
No, but how I got into apprenticeships was I thought that I'm ready to go into the industry. I think one of the problems is that it's not that there's a problem with knowing about apprenticeships in school, because there is. The problem is students who come from a lower socioeconomical background not knowing about it, because I come from that background myself, and before I was told about it, I had absolutely no idea, where I have friends who are in them who come from middle and upper class backgrounds, and because of that, they've also, because of their parents, they've got contacts within the field, where there isn't that for people who have families who aren't from that economic classes. And there's also directly a problem with diversity, and one of the ones which are highlighted at the minute is the diversity between men and women within apprenticeships, where one of the ones which aren't highlighted, which affects me, is racial diversity. And I have a question for you, and that is, do you have a plan to aid or more so combat racial diversity within apprentices and for people who come from lower socioeconomic backgrounds?
Yeah, definitely, and you're completely right. I mean, I myself am from a lower social economic background, maths teacher actually told me about it, and you know, that was just a random thing, right? In terms of black and ethnic minorities, we do have, what we've been trying to do, it's all about, as you say, if you don't have the networks or the contacts, it's seeing that it's possible, or seeing somebody like you, or seeing somebody get the opportunity, or seeing where the employment opportunities are. So we've got a black and ethnic minority apprenticeship ambassadors. So if you're really interested in this topic, beware, because you know, you two could be involved in this, because it's, you know, like, you're a great role model for other people. Get out and to talk to others, to say, hey, you know, you may not know this exists, but this is the best kept secret ever. And actually, I've seen that for 35 years since I did mine. I've still thought degree apprenticeships are the best kept secret that nobody ever knew about. And yet they've been going for a long time. But we've never done enough till everybody knows what's available and all the options that are available to them. And so it was great to see, actually, I mean, Matthew was talking about school and didn't hear anything in school, but obviously Gloucester Academy were downstairs, a whole class full of people. It has been a challenge with schools. Some schools are massively fans of apprenticeships, some people never mention them. But everybody needs to get every opportunity really understood at a young age, so you can make the right choices, and they're not just random, they come to you randomly as yours did. So more to do, I think.
And Minister, by curious coincidence, actually the point that Taylor raised there implicitly about whether there's any possible barriers to employment for people from different and minority ethnic backgrounds, right now, starting 6 minutes ago, is the session at this Gloucestershire Lift Off on are there still barriers to BAME employment, and what can we do to get rid of them. That session is being chaired by Manny Massey just down the road here, and it would be fantastic, Taylor, if you can join that session when you leave this room. Dan, who's there at the doorway with his mask on, will point you in the right direction, and it would be really good to have your contribution to that session as well. Now, I'm conscious, Minister, that time is running out for this session, although I think I'm right in saying that most people in this room are going to stay, and we're going to have a socially distant sandwich lunch at some of the round tables at the other end of this room. So for those of you who are staying, that would be great. But is there any last question from the audience to the Minister? Here we are, hands are up.
Hi, thanks for coming down. We are an employer and a training provider. We've just had to go through the process of sadly making redundancies. The incentives that are out there are fantastic, but the incentives don't seem to cover those apprentices that have been made redundant. So to take on a new apprentice, you get the incentive, but if you take on a redundant apprentice, you're not eligible. They don't fall into that category, is my understanding of it. So
I don't think that's a correct understanding, actually, but I will check that, because I think that first of all, for redundant apprentices, we've done two things. From the apprentices' viewpoint, the first is give more flexibility to, well, first of all, they went on furlough if they could, but if they're going to be made redundant, to give more flexibility to complete the training without the job bit. But I believe that redundant apprentices will also get the incentive amount as well.
yeah, the guidance isn't overly clear on that.
Okay. Yeah, we'll make it clearer though, because if it isn't, I mean, it would make no sense, right, to be able to not have that group also incentivised. In fact, we met somebody in Glos College who'd actually just benefited from that, and the college actually helped him.
Yeah, and the incentive that what was announced, I believe it was yesterday, is that you know there's going to be more. Yes, which is an absolutely great help to get, especially for the providers that do want to finish them.
Yeah. No, you've learned so much, and we want to try and make sure that they don't lose their learning if it takes a bit longer to continue, you know, to get a new job, because if you're 75% of the way through the apprenticeship, you can continue formal studies without the on-the-job bit holding you back if you've lost your job.
So Clarkson Evans are a huge employer of apprentices in electrical engineering in the county, but I think I'm right in saying that actually the point the Minister made is correct, that you can take on someone who's been made redundant and you are eligible for that fee. So that's helpful to have cleared that up. Thank you on that one. Now, at this stage, I think we better bring this session to an end. Those who are staying to have sandwich with the Minister, please do so. We'll move to the tables where you can all have an individual conversation, which won't be live streamed. But for the live streaming session, I want to thank everybody for coming and joining the session, and Minister Gillian Keegan for having laid out your commitment and the government's commitment to funding lots more apprenticeships and making sure that there are incentives in there for SMEs, whether through the supply chain or through the cash incentives to take people on, so that people like Belinda Wilson at Glos Jobs can advertise lots more apprenticeships and we can get our young into those roles.
And well done actually to you, Richard, and to all the other Gloucester MPs for coming together. I know it's taken a lot of work to bring all this together during coronavirus as well, but this is the first one I've gone to, because as usual we're ahead of the pack, and the first one's arranging it, but it's really important that everyone works together during this time, because we can do anything if we work together. So well done to you and all the other MPs who have put so much into this. It's a great initiative.
Well, thank you very much, Gillian. The truth, of course, is that most of the hard work was done by my office, which includes Laura, who was my first apprentice 10 years ago. What's terrific to see, as you've already noticed, is the way in which this is the first event for many people. The first one you've been able to go out and do during lockdown, and the same for many other people in the room. And the question was asked a couple of months ago when I had this idea as to whether this was the right time to do it. Some people said, you should wait. But my instinct was that the longer we waited, the more likely the tsunami would be on us before we got our act together. And I hope that although we're having to wear masks and all the rest of it, I hope that everybody agrees that trying to get ahead of the curve, understand the incentives, the programs, the kickstarters, how we can help each other and the young is really important. I'm grateful to my colleagues, Mark Harper from the Forest of Dean and Alex Chalk from Cheltenham have been in the room during this session. I'm really grateful for all their support. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, will you join me in thanking Gillian Keegan for coming up to Gloucester, visiting apprenticeship courses, meeting apprentices, pupils and employers, and joining us today. So thank you, Gillian.
Thank you.
Has been already previously in place. So yes, thanks for the invite. My name is Siwasiso Shabalala, and we run apprenticeship programs, mainly to support and encourage more of an uptake for those coming from African, Caribbean and Asian backgrounds. This was an initiative started by the previous Minister of Apprenticeships through the Apprenticeship Diversity Hubs. There are 5 of them: Manchester, Birmingham, London, Bristol. I always forget the other one. And the main reason for these hubs is because those are the areas that have got a low uptake of BAME within those. So our role was, how do we encourage more uptake from those communities? And we did a 3-strand approach. One was working with community organizations to encourage, motivate, run webinars, meet each other and just to find out about what is an apprentice. And then the second step was to work with small businesses about the levy share, so they could understand how to get access to the levy share. What does that mean? What is an apprentice? If it works, what actually happens? How does that work with a business time and everything else? And then our third part was then to work with businesses, corporate businesses, to make sure that the environment in which they have, if they got an apprentice, would the apprentice actually stay? And we did this mainly within the creative sector. As to paint a picture, the creative sector in Bristol is only 3% diverse, and when you go into that diversity, it's only 0.5 that's African Caribbean. So there's no black-led agencies in Bristol in that way for marketing and advertising. So when the creative sector tries to recruit young people, they find that those young people don't stay because they don't see that diversity. And even if they want to create content that reflects them, they the staff members wouldn't get what the young person is trying to do. So in that sense, the young person just feels, this is not what I want to do. And also that the creative sector works project by project, so they found it very hard to commit to 18 months or 24 months kind of opportunities. So we then found an option of how they could share an apprentice. So from one festival, the apprentice would then move to another festival, and this would be coordinated centrally. So just trying to find different ways in which we could support that. But still the uptake was low, so what we then started to do is to work with Claire Dove from the Crown Service to implement this within the procurement supply chain. So no procurement has been about 10% is social value, and wanted to increase that to at least about 20 to 25%, so that we could have a clear remit on apprenticeships, ex-offenders, whatever other criteria that could be there. So those have been the different ways in which we've tried to encourage that, and also working with local governments on changing the images that they put across for apprenticeships. Because through a radio station that we work with, and we get adverts from companies that want to recruit our audience, but then they're sending us white images. It just doesn't really make sense. Like we're a black radio station, and they want us to use these images to that kind of recruitment just didn't work.
The thing is,
the message just hasn't been
I'm
taken.
just thinking from the other point of view now. Does that mean that black people can't advertise white things? Because you're implying now that because you're trying to educate, or you're trying to actually target black people, we should only have black actors doing those sort of adverts.
No, that's what we're saying, is that the nuances of advertising and recruiting is more relevant when the team that's even creating the content understands diversity. And you can see this in the creation of the face recognition software. The face recognition software, because it's been built majority by white IT consultants and creatives, that those IT things don't reflect back to black community. So when we talk about diversity and apprenticeships, it's all really interconnected. That for those agencies to really be able to recruit young black apprenticeships, and even adults, I'm an apprenticeship myself, I start next week, right? You have to see the images that make sense to you, they resonate with you, you see the advert, it just appeals to you, you hear the radio advert, the way that it's said appeals to you, you go into the company, you see images that reflect to you, and at least you want to see somebody, because then I don't want to just see the cleaner that looks like me. Yeah? Because if I see the cleaner, then I feel like a tokenistic person within that organization, and you're not going to retain me just automatically, just like that. I'm going to just come off. And what we're finding is that most young people would rather be freelancers. As creative as they are, they're rather like, I don't want to be employed in this undiverse company. I'd rather be a freelancer and I have my own rates. You pay me what you pay me. If you don't pay me, no fine. I'll find it myself. So we're finding that the market of freelancers is drastically increasing.
I know. I'm going to bring Charles in here now. Charles, tell us, how many enterprises are there, self-employed people, and any idea of how many ethnic minorities are taking part in that?
Sorry, Ben. If I'd known I was coming to your seminar, I would have looked up our figures. We've got quite a good rate, I think.
But how many million businesses are there?
Oh, how many? Yeah. Was it 5.6 million?
5.6 million businesses in this country.
Employing under 10 people. And
employing under 10 people.
Most of those are one or two.
And a lot of them are Asian, African, Caribbean, because of exactly what you just said, and that is, because a lot of the Asian people feel that when they're working for an employer, that they're not given the opportunities to progress, they're not given promotion, so therefore they set up their all out going to set up their own business. But anyway, so going back to you, Val, so you work with the community and so on. I mean, what are people doing? What's happening? If they don't get a job, what are they doing? Are they trying to set up their own businesses?
There is.
I noticed we've got a lot of, in Barton Street, there are a lot of businesses that are starting up. You've got a lot of African, Caribbean, Asian.
Yeah, more of the Ukrainian,
Eastern European
now. But it's like a revolving door in a sense. In the 50s, there were more of the black Jamaicans and so on having more of an infrastructure influence in their jobs and working for themselves. And then as the next generation come along, there's more people looking for more jobs. But what is happening, I agree with the panel, if you don't see yourself as, you know, the role model, you can only see them in brochures or on TV, but you haven't seen that role model around you, then you think, well, can you achieve that? And especially if you're working for someone, an organisation, if they don't see someone of colour in, they're not going to see you achieving either. So, but back to your question.
We're going to break that cycle, aren't we? So how are we
Well,
going to do it?
the cycle can't be broken as it is at this moment because there's not enough.
But it's got to be broken. Everything is possible.
It's been 70 years, right? And it hasn't changed.
We're going to change it shortly. Let me just ask you. Now, your National Affairs said, what are you doing to try to get more black and ethnic minority people into careers that they want to actually achieve?
Well, to be honest with you, when I go and do talks and stuff, because I am an ethnic minority myself, I do see like a lot of positive conversations. You have to talk to young people, say, you know, you can be anything you want to be. I mean, my journey's been up and down. I actually started off doing a positive action traineeship with Seed back in back in the day. I'm older than I look.
Bristol.
Yeah, that was about 15 years ago. So I was taken on because the county council at the time had an underrepresentation of minority ethnic people in jobs, specific jobs, if they weren't a cleaner so I did a traineeship myself. So I do a lot of talks. I go to university and I talk to women and I talk to them about being a positive black role model as a woman and how the National Career Service has helped me, and now I manage it, so that's a positive thing in my own journey. So I talk to them about the struggles I've had and how to overcome them, being positive, always look for an opportunity.
Give me 3 things you can do to overcome them.
3 things?
Yeah, we've only got 6 minutes.
Oh, right, okay.
So 3 things that you can do to overcome these problems.
So 1, educate yourself.
Yeah.
You know, get some education. Don't think everyone's going to do anything for you. You need to do that for yourself.
Yeah.
2, stop making excuses. Yeah. Yes, we do.
Brexit, no.
Brexit, no. We have had a lot of trials as black people, minority ethnic people, but we need to keep pushing forward. I would not be in the role I am if I had that attitude. Yeah. It is difficult. 3, find yourself a good mentor.
Good one.
A good mentor. I mentor probably about 20 women.
Oh, right.
And it's long. It's hard. But trying to get them to see the value in themselves, that they can be leaders, that they can achieve what they want to achieve. And if you get yourself a good mentor to push you forward, then you've always got someone to bounce ideas off, someone that can steer you in the right direction, someone you can aspire to be with. And like you were saying, you need to see people you can identify with. If you go to a gym and you want to put on some muscle, if you don't see anyone in the gym with muscles and ripped, then it's not going to give you an incentive to continue training, is it? So it's exactly the same in business. If you see somebody that you can identify with, that understands not only your personality, but your cultural background as well, then I think that's really important. And my team is reflective of that as well, that I work with. So.
Sit down. You've achieved quite a lot. You've managed to get a lot of people into apprenticeships and so on. Give me a few ideas. How can we overcome these problems?
So we do
Bristol
Black History Month.
Yeah.
And spreading that to rest of England. And you know, it's not just an October thing. It's an all-year-round thing. And the thing that makes it all year round is really about, you know, advertising and promoting the great case studies that happen so young people can see those aspirational content. And what we find is that sometimes our own community is not really comfortable to be highlighted. You know, they feel like it's boasting or no, I don't want to know and I'm shy. And that then affects the fact that people don't see those great aspirational people in different roles. So one of our key things is really how do we use marketing for good to embrace and highlight people? Because all companies can say they're doing great things, right? But what you don't see is that they don't advertise in the appropriate spaces that the audience can see them. They want to advertise on Vogue. It's not there, right? Like, it's not, you're missing it. So what we're saying is you need to think about black businesses to advocate and promote the information that you are promoting when it comes to getting that audience back.
Okay. Last.
Yeah, don't stop knocking on a closed door. Go to a door that is open. In other words, make sure that you can then do your own thing. You know, be inspired by yourself. If you need to be re-educated, re-educate yourself. If you need to ask for support, ask for support. It doesn't matter what race you are. If you go to a person and be assertive, you can say, look, this is what I'm doing. Can you help me? They can only say no, or they can only say yes.
Great. Any questions? 2 minutes we have. Yes. Oh, Brett.
Thanks for the apologies. I was coming in with the other gentleman from the seminar with the minister, really. And the one thing I would offer as a thought is having the privilege to be mentored by Val in terms of some of the work that I really is don't be fearful and don't keep silent.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy like that, and it's so right, so to take that courage and actually do the opposite, which is be very vocal, be very honest. Really. I'm still really disappointed in Gloucester, if I'm truthful. Really, it's not a knock, whatever, but it's just a personal observation, whatever. Really, in terms of some of the bits I've been doing around health for just over 2 decades, really.
But who are you blaming?
Are you blaming anyone? I don't think we've done is I just don't think we've moved on so far. I want to say, I mean, it's great listening to Bristol. I've got some good friends there in Birmingham, etc. But I just don't get a feel that Gloucester's moved on, whatever, really, in terms of this agenda. I'm not saying so at the pace I think it should have. So when I look at the NHS and those little bits I do, you know, I'm horrified that the budget holder for Gloucestershire has no visible diversity on their board at all.
Not one.
And has had no visible diversity on their board for some time. When we look at some of the others in Gloucestershire, they do have that. When we look at Ross Healthcare Services, they are positively said, we know there's a gap, so let's do the obvious, which is action. So I think there needs to be some consistent willingness to do it beyond actions. And when I look around the number of people in this room, and when there's 30, I think per that, you know, isn't that a disappointment as well? Really? So great that you've got all the good and the great upstairs for that nice discussion with the ministry questions, really.
Brent, I have to end there.
But thank you.
Thank you very much.
To Val as well.
All I would say is 1 minute ago, thank you very much for your panel. Val Sins.
Monique
Monique
Smith.
Smith.
He still doesn't remember me.
No, I do.
No, you don't. We did so much work together. I can't believe it. So rude.
And Sim Shabalala. Thank you very much.
Yeah, when I do. Yeah. Yeah, my parents did want me to have they wanted us to have names that.
Hi guys, thank you so much. That was awesome. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Anne. I work for Gloucestershire Constabulary. I'm one of the positive action officers.
There's a positive action officer now,
isn't
there?
Yes.
Moved on a bit there. I'm terrible.
I know where you're coming from.
I'm not very happy with that anyway.
Are you not? Okay,
statistics-wise.
Well, let's have a conversation. Yeah. This is why my team is at Gloucestershire Constabulary to break that vicious circle. You know.
It would be good because when you look at the representation of ethnic minorities in the police force, and
there's none.
Right.
Right, so I will answer. I will say what you wanted to say. There's none.
Just say I was going to go really nicely.
You know what? I'm not, and I understand that. Yeah. When I started 18 months ago, when I entered the building, I looked around and I said, "Oh, that's boring. Yeah. What is going on here?" Yeah. And this is why I've joined Better Together Team, because we want to make sure that there is physical representation within police officers, as well as police staff, because we've got plenty of opportunities. And what we want to do, we want to encourage people from all sorts of backgrounds to join police of any capacity.
Wow.
So we can have the same conversation in a few months' time. But
Send
you know,
you an email.
get in touch.
I will.
And if there's any way, if we can link to our work
That'd
in
be
any
good.
capacity.
You know, Gwen, we've got a program called WIMS, Walk in My Shoe.
Yes.
So we'll be in touch with you.
Fantastic.
Oh,
And we
okay, cool.
also, Gloucestershire
supposed
Constabulary
to do this, Gwen.
will be doing a
can
lot
barely
for
write as well.
Black History Month. So we've got, if we can link,
No, I've got more in my bag.
Yeah.
We are the magazine, Southwest. So
Right.
where else will you advertise?
Well, do you see? Well, let's connect. Let's give me,
Send me an email.
give me
Or right, I've got a dash, sorry, I've left my staff member on her own. Nice to meet you.
Bless her. Services linked already.
Fantastic. So, let's get in touch.
Well, I'm sure you're not familiar. You weren't at one of the other events down at the Friendship Cafe, was you?
I was when we celebrated Women's Day.
Right.
Okay. I was there.
Get to see you and talk to you all, but I'll come back a little bit so I can see.
If that's what we're doing,
Can you see each other properly? Great. Are you happy for us to start?
Kishi?
If you just, we'll wait 40 seconds.
Yeah.
Because that's when it officially
We're going to like the mid-joke.
This
is the punchline.
Exactly.
What was the question?
I'm super impressed with this event. He's done well to pull it all together.
Certainly
I'm
has.
really impressed.
Sean, have you been back to Parliament?
No, I haven't actually. So I was sent home. The chief whip made me go home at the beginning of March because I was in my 3rd trimester and I refused. I was like, I don't want to go home. But and so I haven't been back since, and I'll go in 2nd of November.
5 seconds. And you are live.
Well, thank you for logging in and for being here today to talk about upskilling and skills opportunities in Gloucestershire. I have a really fabulous panel with me today, and it's a real privilege. I'm the new MP for Stroud, Siobhan Bailey, and it's a real passion of mine, further education. I know I've spoken to many of you on the panel about that already, and I've been really lucky to be made the further education ambassador with the Department for Education. Actually, while I'm on maternity leave, I'm still on maternity leave at the moment, but I will be going back to Parliament to do even more ambassadoring. But no, the reason I'm particularly just take a minute to really passionate about further education is because I didn't go to university myself. If you had looked at my exam results, which I would be embarrassed to show you all, particularly as you're a smart educationalist, quite a lot of people would have written me off at that stage. I'd left home very early, and what I went and got a job in a law firm as a secretary, and then from there I was given what is effectively an apprenticeship in law, and I studied while I worked to become a solicitor. And I have met so many young people that for various different reasons have been written off, whether it's family trouble, whether it's chaotic lives, whether it's not being great at their exams. And I know that when they go into colleges and when they get the right people around them and they go to universities and they get people saying you can do this, you can get on, and let's look at options for you, that they can go on to really bright futures. And that's why I get really excited about the further and the higher education opportunities. So I will stop yapping, because I would yap all day, and I'll just let my panel introduce themselves. So I'll start here.
Hello everybody, I'm Stephen Marston, I'm Vice-Chancellor at the University of Gloucestershire.
Hello, I'm Sarah Jane Watkins and I'm Principal of South Gloucestershire and Stroud College.
I'm Matthew Burgess, I'm Principal at Gloucestershire College.
And I'm Karen Fraser and I'm Vice Principal at Cirencester College.
That's great. And I think as a starting point, if I start with Matt, you can just tell us a little bit about sort of what your experiences are with sort of young people at the moment, and encouraging them into skills and encouraging them to look at new opportunities.
I think there are probably two blocks of that. What we're seeing in terms of full-time students coming back, and also it's a slightly strange time on the back of COVID, and it's great this week that, you know, I'm sure my colleagues here will say the same. You know, we've reopened, we've got students back in the building, and that feels really good and feels really positive. Clearly there are fewer opportunities for them at the moment in terms of employment. Clearly there are fewer opportunities for them in terms of, you know, even things like apprenticeships, you know, which is a concern, and there are some real challenges for them at the moment. But we know from previous, you know, recessions, perhaps not quite this scenario, that those who stay on in education, and, you know, the higher the level they get, the more robust they are to the challenges ahead. But there's some really able, talented kids who just need the opportunities out there, you know, and we've got to do our bit to get them through.
And how many students do you have at college?
So every year, our profile is slightly unusual compared to most FE colleges. We have about 3,000 full-time, but we are very largely dependent on adult and employer work. The heritage, the history of the college is inextricably linked to the local employment profile. That's where we come from. So, I don't know, we've got, you know, 1,200-1,300 apprentices, you know, thousands of adults on various programs, and at the moment it's about confidence for people to come back in and resume learning and training.
Thank you. And Karen, just a little bit about your college and students and sort of your experiences of getting of how young people are wanting to take up opportunities at the moment.
Okay. Cirencester College is slightly different than my colleagues here. Smaller, but much more sixth form focused. So the majority of our work is A-levels and their route through to university. So we have recruited well this year. We've got around about 2,400 full-time students doing mixed programs, some vocational and some A-levels, but predominantly A-levels. We do have some adult work, but not a lot. Most of our adult work is English and Maths, GCSE, AAT, teacher training, that sort of thing. And those have recruited very well. And we're seeing, good take on that sort of thing.
Actually, I had a lot of your students, there's quite a few people come from Stroud, don't they, to go into Cirencester, and obviously when we had difficulties with exam results over the summer, I was speaking to a lot of students and families over there, and I had really good responses from the college, and actually for all of you, you work really hard to sort of iron out the bumps and support the young people, so I do appreciate it.
I've done quite well with quite a few Oxford and Red Brick University places. It's good. Lots of medics and vets.
That's really good. And Stephen, I know we've spoken before, and I think it'd be really great. I'm not down on universities, by the way. I constantly go on about colleges, and I will not apologise for that. But I'm not down on universities. My main thing is that I think for many years, people were kind of shepherded into a university route without understanding the options. And your university is quite clever in terms of what you offer anyway, and we've got a lot of Gloucestershire people that will go on to your university. So if you could tell us a bit about you and a bit about what you know motivates into skills would be great.
Sure. So at the University of Gloucestershire we have about 9,000 students, and what we've seen this year is actually, I think, an increase compared with last year. We're up by about 10% on our new intake of student numbers. And I think what's going on there, rather as Matt was suggesting, is actually youngsters are very clear, they do understand that particularly in a difficult labour market, you need skills, you need qualifications if you're to stand the best chance of getting through to the job and the career that you want. And I do think that is well understood, and I think that's one reason why, in really difficult, disrupted, turbulent circumstances, youngsters have still been willing to say, actually, I am going to go for that. That is going to be the next step in my life, and that's what I want to do. Some of the highest demand levels have been in those professional, vocational, occupational areas. Nursing and allied health is booming because we all now appreciate even more just how dependent we are on the health service. So nursing and allied health has gone really well. Computing and cyber, another one. Business and management. Initial teacher education, many of the more clearly vocational and vocational
Into a
routes
job.
are where the big demand is, because you can see the career route.
Yes.
And I think that's increasingly important for people now. It's important for parents as well as to youngsters to know, you know, I want to have a good time at university or college. I also want to know there's a good job at the end of it. And we're really trying to support our students in that. It's one reason why we've developed strongly on apprenticeships. You know, this year we hope to have about 500 higher degree apprenticeships, and that's also, you know, building well, because people see, they understand that as a route through to their career ambitions.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So we've got a generation of youngsters particularly that are going to be thinking even harder about their future because of the difficulties that we've all been faced with. And I think a lot of times adults can underestimate how smart young people are when thinking ahead and trying to plan for their futures. So Sarah Jane, it's great to hear about SGS. I feel like I spend most time bothering you since I've been candidate and MP. But I'd be also interested to hear, sort of building what Stephen said, so what the popular courses at the moment. So it sounds like there's quite a push to have, there's been a big boost for numbers in all of your facilities. So good to know.
So yes, it's great to have your support. So SGS is a regional college, so we have campuses in Stroud and Gloucestershire, but also in Bristol, and collectively we have about 4,000 16 to 18-year-olds across our four main sites. We have about 2,000 apprentices and 500 degree-level students and about 10,000 adult learners. And I think, as everybody has said today, it's great to have learners back in the college, and young people need the stability of an organisation like a college, not just from the socialisation perspective, but also from the well-being and the support, and especially the mental health services that we give so many young people, and also the support that we give to many young people that are in poverty, so with free meals, food bank vouchers, etc. So, like everybody, we have seen a boom, surprisingly, this September in terms of individuals choosing to go into education. So the areas that we've seen phenomenal growth, echoing what Matt and Stephen have already said, health and social care, so lots of growth in that area. But also things such as construction. Our construction numbers are through the roof, so individuals want to have a trade, a skill, they don't want to be reliant on what they see as vulnerable sectors. We're fortunate in that we don't do a lot in things like retail and catering, which I think has been quite badly hit. We've also seen large growth in A-levels, so we have a large A-level centre at our Bristol site, nearly 400 learners studying A-levels, and we've also seen considerable growth in things like access courses, so young adults who haven't quite yet made the grade to go to university, they're going back to get an access to higher education qualification, but also, quite surprisingly, lots of individuals who have been made redundant deciding to go through an access programme so that they can retrain. So we've just recently had some air pilots that have decided that that's not the industry for them anymore. They're taking an access course because they want to go into medicine. So really, I think it's about just reflecting that everything that we offer is different this year, and that the market has totally changed. But I think what all of us are providing is provision where learners are developing their resilience, but also transferable skills, because we never know what's around the corner. I think the whole coronavirus situation has really just evidenced that. None of us predicted this at the start of the year. I think all we were focused on was getting through Brexit when the pandemic came along. And I think young people need to be armed with as many qualifications as possible, but also to be resilient and adaptable, to actually take those skills into any sector, because we don't know what the next big thing is going to be.
No, that's really helpful, and I think it's fascinating to hear about the boom of interest and the fact that people are kind of picking their courses. So, Kevin, I mean, there are signs up around.
We also do childcare.
And childcare. Yeah, you might be able to hear my baby, who is being very carefully looked after by my assistant.
So you'll be all right.
I'm actually on an early years task force, so I might have to take it home. But yes, sorry about that if you can hear the baby. But I see. But no, I was just thinking, Karen. So you've got young people in A-levels predominantly that you were saying. How have you seen them change from this COVID period, the 6 months or so that we've had to be dealing? How are you finding them, and how is that impacting their choices and managing their education time?
I think we probably all experience high levels of anxiety and that worry of people coming back. They've been out of education for so long, particularly the new ones coming in where they're not really their GCSE grades. They're just a grade they've been given, and there's a little bit of I could have done better than this, and I wasn't given the opportunity to do that.
Are they choosing to resit, or do they just want to put the thing to bed and move on?
We've taken the approach that we've looked at what they were predicted originally and what they were planning to do, and we've worked with them. So things like English and maths, yes, they do need to resit if they haven't got the grades, because they can't go on to the universities and the courses they want to do without those. So if they've not quite got the grades, or they want to improve their grades, they're doing that. But largely we're working with them to get them onto their career path and to get them where. So it might take them a little bit longer. So we've got a programme we call Access to A-Levels, which it basically gives them another year, but they're doing a mix, almost like a 2.5 level. So they're not continuing their level 2, they're doing level 3 courses, but they're mixing it with their English and maths, and it gets them on their way to their A-Levels. And that we started that last year, and that is doing really well to support those that need that a bit longer. It's a big jump from GCSE to A-Levels, as colleagues will probably bear out.
And actually being in the college gives them the support, and being, if they have been impacted by the COVID months, then you've got wraparound care as well to
yes, we've got extra support around mental health, all that pastoral care really generally, and that holding hands and making sure that we're all doing the same thing. We're all aware that they need that extra support, and it's not such a. It's a big shock for all of them to come back, having been out so long, and get back into the routine of learning.
So it's almost unfair for me to have you all answering questions now, because it's literally the first couple of weeks, isn't it? And you've all worked all summer as well. And then but I think, Matt, just thinking about your college, it'd be really interesting how your youngsters have come back, or young people have come back, and how do you go about giving careers advice? Because how do the teachers kind of they've already made decisions about what courses they want to take, but does the college kind of get involved with career opportunities and advice as well?
I think we will, but perhaps not this week.
No.
I think I'd be suggesting on that one. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the focus of this week has been getting staff and students back into some kind of routine, some kind of normality. And you have to remember, for some students and staff, this may be almost the first time they have left their homes for a very long period, and that brings with it, and I'm sure we can all feel it in our own situations, a certain kind of mental health challenges, how we have felt over this period. So that has very much been the focus. For sure, we will have plans in place around careers, and that will be important. Because as I said earlier, until there are some different prospects out there, it's going to be quite challenging to see the route through. So, I understand entirely at the moment why many people have made the choice to go to university at age 18, who may not normally have done that, because actually the employment market is very difficult. We're doing something positive towards our career. We have a lot of students that we will, be working with them to ensure they're getting the right skills and attributes to progress in their careers. But a big part of that is actually the practical experience that needs the employer involvement, the employer engagement, and that's going to be, I think that's going to be a challenge for us until there's a bit more normality. How do we get those experiences? Because we can give the students the technical qualifications, the technical skills that they need, but the thing that gets them over the line, that gets them progressing in their careers, are those interpersonal skills, and so much of that is about experience.
Okay. And to Sarah Jane, so going back to pre-COVID, because we don't know what's going to happen next. So what's a good example? How do you work with local employers of Gloucestershire and Bristol as well? How do you engage with them and sort of hunt down apprenticeship opportunities and skills opportunities for people? How does the college do that?
So pre-COVID, and we're still doing quite a lot of this, lots of work with the employers in terms of identifying their skills gaps, identifying what their future growth plans are, and that's through organisations such as the local enterprise partnerships, the combined authorities, identifying where the growth and demand is, and pre-COVID it was health, that's where they were expecting the demand, and now post-COVID or during COVID it's even greater. But I think all of us as providers, we do a lot in terms of developing our programmes to respond to needs. So if there's an opportunity, we'll look at developing new foundation degrees or rewriting apprenticeships, working with employers to look at standards. But also, just as an example, SGS over the last 5 years, we've developed a new campus in Gloucestershire at Berkeley, really to respond to the engineering need and to see the growth in new nuclear, engineering, green technologies, cyber. So anything that we feel that this is a growing need within the county, then we'll look at how can we develop our curriculum, how can we adapt our campuses to respond to what employers want. But in addition, as well as the apprenticeships, it's also looking at work experience. So as Matt's already talked about, careers opportunities, work experience is absolutely integral to us all, in that a young person coming to study at any college, work experience they'll have to undertake at least 1 week per year, if not more. And many of us will be delivering T-levels from the course of the next couple of years. T-levels will be providing industry placements, so every young person undertaking a T-level will also have to do a 3-month placement in order to get their qualification. So we recognise the importance of helping young people to be prepared for the world of work.
Same question really to you, Stephen. How do you sort of work with local employers and spot gaps and see what... Do employers come to you often?
They sometimes do. So probably nursing and health will again be the best example, because it was only 4 years ago that we were able, the government changed the regulations, so we were able to start offering nursing and allied health. And we formed at the time a group with the Hospitals Trust, Care Services, the Mental Health Trust, as it was at the time, Care Commission and South West Ambulance. And I'm sure we all find this, your starting point has to be, what do you need as an employer? Not what can we supply, but what do you need? What types of people are you seeking to recruit? What will keep you innovative and productive as a company? What are your skills needs? And then we try to design from there in partnership with the employer. The other route that has worked for us is that we have our growth hub at the university just down the road at Oxtons. And so we have a flow of businesses coming into the growth hub to meet their own business needs, seeking help on enterprise innovation or trade or whatever it is they want help with as a business. They're coming into our business school, so that gives us a sort of good way of working with some of these businesses to say, yes, of course we will help you with what you think the problem is. Is there other help, in terms of working with students, offering placements, offering work experience, providing you with apprenticeship programs. So it's a bit of both. We obviously are constantly going out to employers, but also some are coming to us to say, we've got the skills need, we've got the skills gap, can you help?
So if anyone is watching, listening, watching online, I do think it's one of the reasons why I look at sort of the Gloucestershire providers or the colleges and the university here, because there's such a lot of hard work goes on to making and building those relationships over the years with employers and if you don't want to be travelling miles and miles or you hadn't thought about the fact that there are so many opportunities here, my esteemed panel are the perfect example of why it's worth looking locally, and I don't feel that Gloucestershire youngsters often think first, think Gloucestershire first, and I think there's a lot of work for us all to do, and I know the LEP are actually doing a Think Gloucestershire campaign, a lot of work for us all to do to keep people local, because that route into a job is so important. Really interested to hear what you think about T-levels, Matt, and where any gaps are, what government could do better, because I'm conscious that they are, to me, they are a very good route to learning in a into a job with experience, but I know they're pretty new, and new things
They
usually have
are.
holes.
Karen, I'm going to speak a bit more because you've started, and we start next year.
Okay.
So I suppose in kind of big picture terms, conceptually, what's not to dislike about it? There's lots of good things. It's trying to raise the profile of certain vocational qualifications. It's working with employers around the skills that they want, and it's building in that work placement, which I said before, that's kind of really important. I think the real challenges of actually doing that and how it works on the ground, but in principle it's good, and the early indications are, nationally some good enrolments in some areas, like construction, some areas like digital has struggled a bit more, which perhaps surprises me, of the ones that might struggle. But it's early days, I imagine. But interesting to see what you've seen so far.
We've managed to we're running the three that have been released this year. So there's a childcare, budgets, education and learning, the digital one, and the construction, which is it's construction design based. So we've got all three of those running as of now. The problems are, as Sarah Jane mentioned earlier, about in the work experience placements. So whilst we have quite a lot set up, some of those are getting pushed back a little bit, or there are restrictions that need to go in place, and it all depends on what happens with COVID and what is required, and is that another bubble? So there's lots of complicated things like that, but the actual courses themselves are popular and are sound, and we're gearing up now for the next set, so that the health sciences that are running out next year, which will be really good, certainly for our cohort.
And are there routes for you, I mean obviously you can speak to your MPs, but are there routes for you to feed into, do you feel like you've got a good route into DFE to let us know as politicians and the department know where there's, because what we don't want is people starting T-levels not being able to get the experience routes because the employers aren't taking on.
I think DFE and politicians are very aware of the concerns. They've been raised. I don't think there's no doubt about that. And speak the areas that I go. One of the concerns is around geographical coverage. So if you're a young person in Coventry and you want to go into a motor vehicle, there's probably lots of opportunities locally that you can travel to. And students, particularly at lower levels, don't tend to travel that far for various reasons. If you're in the Forest of Dean, you may have fewer opportunities. And that's a concern, but don't get me wrong, I think the principles are right. How it's actually going to play out over time will be interesting.
I think there are also challenges. I mean, we're very much aware as providers of T-levels. I'm not convinced young people at school are aware of T-levels, and I don't feel that they have been briefed. I mean, I have children currently at secondary school, never been told a thing about T-levels. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of brand awareness and campaign raising, especially with parents.
That's important to know. I think there's a lot of work to done careers advice all level. I mean, there's a lot being discussed about whether you should have careers advice in primary school, either just to get that kind of thought processes about where to go. But having you heard my screaming baby, I don't want to. I'm not the educationalist.
But on that point, just to raise, I think that is a great time to actually start careers advice, because when you're in primary, you're open to many ideas. You're not swayed by your peers, and so I think to take it young would be a really good opportunity.
Well, we've been talking about a lot about young people, adult learners. If you were going to do a pitch to why adult learning and reskilling is important, we know the obvious. I mean, in Stroud we've got over 16,000 people on the furlough scheme. That will be coming to an end. There may be a big amount of redundancies. We've got to face the facts, and I think it will be a very difficult, certainly autumn and winter, and potentially into the next year. I want as many people as possible, if they are out of work, to be thinking, how can I go and reskill? So if you could start with Sarah Jane, actually, how would you pitch to adults to come and do a college course or go into a university?
I think for all of us, we over the last 6 months have all had to experience new things. I mean, 6 months ago, I'd never heard of Zoom. Now Zoom is an integral part of our lives, and I think we are never too old to gain new skills. And I think because of the experience that we've been through, now is the perfect opportunity to actually develop those address those gaps that we've probably all had to identify over the course of the last few months. So, and I think this way of life will continue in terms of the working from home and going into the office. And it's about understanding, how am I up to speed with digital technologies, work-life balance, how can I be more efficient and effective? And I think we need to be armed with as many transferable skills as I've already mentioned, because we just don't know which are the safe sectors anymore. So it's what can we turn our hand to? But I also think it's about mental health as well, in that we don't just have to go back to college for a skill. It's also about the leisure courses, so things like yoga, reflexology, to help your overall well-being. And I think over the course of the last few months, we've probably all considered our own mental health. So I think colleges can provide both skills, but also the leisure opportunities to enable that balance.
I think I agree with all of that. I think one effect of the lockdown probably has been just, if you like, a big shock to all of us, a prompt to rethink, well, actually, is this the life that I want? So, as well as people who are losing their job and they have to retrain, if you like, I think there are probably quite a lot of others who have been sitting trying to work from home in lockdown thinking, actually, is this my opportunity now to change to something that I really wanted to do? And it can be, you know, and so there are a whole range of motivations why you might want to do this, to gain new skills for a new job, or just because actually this is the point in your life, well, I now want to do something completely different and want to get on with it. The issue we face, you know, seeking your help, Siobhan, as one of our parliamentarians, is actually the way particularly universities courses work. It's great if you can contemplate a 3-year undergraduate programme or even a 1 or 2 year master's programme. But actually, certainly if you're mid-career and midlife, 3 years, that's a long time. But the whole finance system is geared around that. You know, it's easy to get a loan for a 3-year programme if you haven't done one before. But if actually the best thing for you is a module, you know, for a couple of months, it's actually hard to organise that. It's hard for us as a university, it's hard for the student to organise that financially, but it may be the right thing for them. So what we need to look for and try and develop is just more flexible ways in which people can logistically organise that in their lives, if they've got dependents, if they've got mortgages, if they've got bills coming in, and I can't contemplate 3 years of study at university. Well, how can we nonetheless help those people retrain, upskill, get the skills, you know, the new certificates and qualifications in a more flexible way?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Matt, sort of your pitch to adult learners, but also if you've got any examples of adults that have been through your college and what they feel, think, and what they've gone on to do.
I think the adult learners are, you know, are very focused and understand, you know, what's important in their lives, and they will be thinking a lot about, you know, their you know, sort of their social and you know, well-being, sort of their economic well-being at the moment, and I imagine, you know, the pandemic in some areas is just accelerating structural change that was coming. So take areas like retail, rather than taking us 20 years to get to point, I think we're getting there very much quicker. I think we're going to see a particular impact on unskilled workers, you know, their opportunities there. We see in something like COVID yet again, the people in professional roles are better protected both in terms of health and their economic situation. They're more able to work from home. So there'll be lots of thinking going on at the moment. And I think my plea would be back to government, because I think the adults want to do it. You know, that'll be nothing new. We see lots of adults who will come through, as Stephen says, you know, late 20s, early 30s, at that point in their career. And we're also seeing a group, I suppose, also of people who've gone to university and have a degree, but that hasn't translated into a good job outcome. If I go back, you know, 10, 15 years ago, we had masses of students doing technical qualifications, the HNCs, the HNDs, that type of level, the very qualifications, the very skills that the local economy has been crying out for the last 5 or 10 years. And we had lots of numbers there because they were subsidised significantly by government. You know, they were pretty much not quite free at the point of entry, but pretty much. And so people could take the opportunity to make their career choices as part of the review of HE funding. I think people thought that they would have the same disposition to taking on debt as people at age 18 do. People at age 18 know it's going to be taxed at some point in their life. It's, you know, can kick the can down the road. People in their late 20s, early 30s that got mortgages and children take a very different view. And I think that is a specific obstacle that has to be addressed, both, you know, to take those people out of potential unemployment, but also to actually provide the skills that we'll need to stimulate our economy in the new industries that will be there, because it won't be the same.
Karen, I've only got a few more minutes, unfortunately, but yeah, good to hear from you as well.
Well, I agree totally.
This is, everybody agrees.
Yeah.
You are my new task force.
I think it, but I don't think it's just at that level going to higher education. There are quite a lot of barriers even at level 3 and level 2. Well, not necessarily level 2, but getting people to have those skills that they need to get that job that they want. And the funding is a barrier quite often. And you know, even those that are just recently unemployed or think they're going to be because they're furloughed at the moment and there might not be something, the paperwork to evidence that they're unemployed will take so long to come through, and then they miss the opportunities to actually access those at that training. So it's almost like we need a COVID fund, which puts the sticking plaster over it in the short term to make it work, and then we can reassess it down the line.
Well, government is incredibly focused on supporting people and making sure that opportunities are, I take on board what you're saying about T-levels, and I do think there's a lot of work to be done to get people to understand not only what courses are available, but what funding is available, and if there's not funding available, then that's my job to go and annoy people to try and get that. And I think it would be remiss of me not to mention that there's an online skills toolkit that the government has created where you can learn different skills like maths, and you know there is a hell of a lot being done. However, we need people to get their heads up and feel like that they can take extra steps, even though it's been a very, very difficult period.
Can I just add, and learning can also be for fun. And whilst it does bail us out of lots of situations, learning can be fun, and it is good for your mental health. It is a muscle that needs exercising. So do so.
I think that's a nice way to end, because we have had fun. So it's good. Well, listen, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm incredibly encouraged that so many, all of you have had a boost in numbers, and people are thinking really carefully about what they're doing and having fun. So thank you for coming, and I will ask everybody here to say thank you in the usual way to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. We've got 2 minutes. Is there anybody here that wanted to ask questions? I appreciate we're offline now. So yeah, is anybody here wants to ask any questions at all under the masks? I just didn't want to know. I didn't want to double check and ask. Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's good. Nice to meet you. You're all right. It's been a week.
Just a bit. I've got my homework.
They're on Friday at the gym.
All right, okay. All right. I mean, I think we had our current second year association back in June, so we had a little bit of a 3-week sort of trial, and whilst things have changed from there, it broke down some of those barriers, so for the students and for the staff, when we got used to how it was going to be in the one-way system, so that helped in terms of the current is how you deal with the cases as they come through. So we've got 3 now, but they're all the same group. And it's just, but it's the fact, you know, it's all of the parents and staff who have
imagine.
One of them but there wasn't going to.
I can imagine. I can just imagine.
So yeah.
Good luck with it anyway.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you so much. Lovely to see you.
No, but this is our first season. Stephen was our kind of first full week, but it's going to happen at some point. You know, it's just.
So to a certain extent, it was our.
Well, we're able to deal with it. The way we structured it is different. So we've got them on AM.
I understand that there are going to be benefits from this. We'll touch on this with the NHS in terms of the underpass and the connectivity from the city centre to the hospital. But of course, connectivity is a much wider issue. The railway station is the place that brings in both visitors and also enables people living in the city to travel very easily to London, Bristol, wherever if they wish to. How important is this to your commitment on the investment side?
Well, the accessibility of Gloucester is one of the key kind of ingredients that we would have looked at and which attracted us, basically. That proximity to the bus station, the railway station and the new transport hub was a key factor. Another key factor is the proximity to an airport. Infrastructure in the future is going to be ever increasingly important, and the airport, having a regional airport in so close, is very important. And it sounds a little bit space age and a bit sort of pie in the sky, but we are genuinely having conversations with our London developments with companies that want to have drone facilities built into the roofs of our buildings that we're building, and that is something that we are genuinely talking to companies about in terms of connections with drones with the airport. It's not inconceivable that at some point in the future, if we do get driverless drones, that you might actually have somebody coming in from America or elsewhere, dropping into the airport and then actually getting a 2-minute drone flight to the top roof of King's Quarter. So it does sound slightly space age, but look how quickly things have developed in the last 6 months on the back of COVID. In addition to that, I don't know how many of you, I obviously am in London a fair bit, and the number of people using electric scooters has been noticeable in terms of how many it's increased by, and they've now become legalised. So we are going to be incorporating space within the development for some, hopefully, bright spark or somebody who's showing a bit of initiative to maybe look at providing a electric scooter hire facility, so that can start to then build up as an alternative mode of transport.
Conversations already on that.
Yeah, they are. And then in addition, obviously, cycling, we will be providing a huge amount of indoor cycling storage. So I think the accessibility of the site, and I think again in terms of changing patterns, working patterns that we all have, we are anticipating. We actually think in terms of our business plan, the impact of COVID is actually strengthened what we're trying to achieve. And we do see this blended working, this opportunity for people to work in sub-regional hubs being absolutely critical. And Gloucester's got everything, hasn't it, in terms of the key ingredients, countryside and affordability, and a very young population and a growing young population as well.
Of course, in the new apartments that will be built by Reef in the Forum, a lot of people will be saying to themselves, Gloucester as a centre for tech, entrepreneurs, cyber businesses, this doesn't quite sound like the Gloucester that we know. And as I was explaining earlier, I think there is a lot more going on than people necessarily realise with the headquarters of these major PLCs, cyber businesses here. And part of what Gloucester has always been, in a sense, catching up on is a sense of the future direction. When Gloucester Quays was launched in 2007-8 from memory, Owen, at that time, many people did not feel that Gloucester was going to be a great retail destination. Cheltenham was the place for that. And the idea of having lots of restaurants and cafes and a whole cafe culture was something that we hadn't seen before in our city. 10 years on, or 12 years on really, that's changed completely. And of course there are some question marks now, and the success of Gloucester Quays going forward will help inspire, I think, some of the young people who want to come and live in places like the Forum. How do you see the future evolving, and how confident are you that Gloucester Quays' success over the last decade will be able to continue even more strongly in the next decade?
We've had a very good 10 years, 11 years. It's our birthday this May, which unfortunately slipped identify with a lot of the things. But we have had a spectacular growth. But it hasn't been 10 years of growth. It really lifted off with the leisure quarter. And I think that was the game changer that allowed us to take on our neighbours and beat them. And that was when we really took off as a centre. And since then, we've gone from strength to strength. And the growth that we've seen...
Give us an idea of that, I mean, how many people came to Gloucester Quays last year?
Last year, our footfall topped 7 million for the first time.
7 million people
7
coming
million.
to Gloucester
Yeah.
Quays,
Yeah.
of whom a significant number also going to the city centre.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we view ourselves as part of the city centre. Absolutely, yeah. We see ourselves as part of the city centre. Anything that brings people into Gloucester benefits everybody. A rising tide lifts all boats, and that's how we feel about our offer. It's part of the city offer. What we've achieved at Gloucester Quays has been built on sound foundations that we continue to use. Since we've reopened after lockdown, we've actually seen our figures for footfall and sales return to pre-lockdown levels. And that is because we're continuing to do the things that we're known for, and we're continuing to attract the retail offers that people come to us for. And that is bringing people into Gloucester that will then use the links that have been spoken about to go into the city and see the offers there, and vice versa. So it's all about that connectivity and that accessibility.
And I know that Jason has said on several occasions to me that one way of looking at the current situation is that the country is going to go through a sort of levelling down process, that some of the expensive retail shops in London are going to really struggle as people find it easier to work from home, but that actually things like outlet centres in some of the regional cities could continue to thrive, if not benefit, from precisely the same factors. Is this wishful thinking, or do you actually really have a view that there will be more people based in and around Gloucester who don't have to travel long distances to get to offices further away, and that therefore the opportunities for further growth in the footfall and sales are actually going to be possible despite the perception that retail is going to struggle to compete with online offers?
Retail is never going to go away. People are always going to want to go and shop. But it's the way that people do that is changing. More and more people now want to have an experiential visit, and they want to link shopping with leisure. They want to live in urban areas such as around the docks areas, and we tap into that, as does the rest of the city. And so I think that will certainly continue. But that's again where, with the advent of the leisure quarter, that's where we realised that retail on its own wasn't enough. That's not what people wanted anymore. But one of the key positives that we've realised post reopening and the feedback we've had from customers is that during the lockdown they actually realised what they were missing, and they realised that they missed going out. They missed the physical interaction with people. They missed being able to look at products, touch products, not just commerce, not just transactional as you get on the internet, but actually the experience of going out and looking at things, buying things, and meeting friends and talking to an actual person. And that's what people missed, and that's what they've enjoyed coming back to. And I think that is how retail will continue. It will be all about the service, it will be about the experience, and it will be providing those things that you simply don't get online.
And that business of the experience also involves culture, because part of the business of families going out and going to Gloucester Quays is for the shopping, it is for the food, the lunch or the supper and the drinks, but it's also, in many cases, to enjoy the heritage of the city. And of course, with Lanterney Secunda just across the water from you, I've always hoped that we might have a gondola service that takes people over towards Lanterney Secunda, where they can enjoy the trees, and the grass, and the open spaces before they return for another feverish bout of shopping later on. Do you think this is something that Gloucester Quays and Peel are going to be helped bring to life?
I'm not going to commit to a gondola service if that's what you're asking. No.
that was an opportunity, but we'll give you another opportunity in a while on that one. But the cultural thing I think is important. And 10 years ago, when I created the Gloucester History Festival, everybody said it can't be done, it won't happen. Cheltenham's the place for festivals. We don't do that sort of thing in Gloucester. Of course, it's taken off. There are 24,000 people who came to the History Festival last year, and I do think that the cultural offering is going to be a vital part of the success of having very high-tech, very upmarket residential developments in our city. So I'm going to come to Gloucester City Council leader Richard Cook, who's going to unmask at this moment and give us a sense of the City Council's role in culture and developing a city centre that isn't just about shopping, but it's a much wider sense of experiences which do include heritage and culture. Richard, what are your thoughts?
Richard, I don't know why you came to me about culture. I consider myself to be a complete culture heathen, although I used to, as you know, visit the History Festival religiously, time after time. Magnificent event. But we're going to be doing work in King's Square, which is going to enable King's Square to be an outdoor performance area. We've got the music works in King's House right next to King's Square. We've got the Culture Trust in the same building on a different floor. All those cultural pursuits will be close by and performed in those areas. I have people contacting me almost daily saying, how can we get involved in what's going to be delivered here? And I just keep pushing them in the right direction, which is not me.
Well, that's very modest, but it is a commitment by the City Council's leadership to widening and broadening the cultural offering in our city centre, which in turn has knock-on effects for people wanting to come to the city and live in the city. So all of these are positives, and the employment comes from that. Owen, just remind us, how many people are working in Gloucester Quays at the moment?
At the moment, we've still got some people to return to work, but allowing for seasonal uplifts, temporary staff, that sort of thing, we're looking at around about 1,500 people at any one time, and that's not including some of the new retailers we've got joining us in the near future.
1,500 people, it's great. And of course the new hotel that's going to be part of the forum, hotels are always good employers. We've lacked a good 4-star hotel in the city centre for a long time, so that will be a huge benefit. Now, the other part of all this, of course, is that employment in Gloucester, as I was saying earlier, it depends to a surprising extent on the health and care sector, with over 20,000 jobs in the county as a whole linked directly to this. And our Hospitals Trust is one of the most innovative in the country, always seeking new things, new skills, and working closely with the college and the university to make sure that those skills are available locally so we can have homegrown talent. To give us a better idea of the sort of wider employment situation is I think you're now the head of apprenticeships, aren't you, Stacey?
Not quite, no.
Not quite. Do you want to have that? We were talking earlier, I mean, to give an idea for young people of the opportunities in the NHS in Gloucestershire, roughly how many apprentices have you got at the moment?
So, I just clarify, I'm not the head of apprenticeships for the whole of the NHS in Gloucestershire, luckily.
Not yet.
Not yet, no. I'm the ICS Apprenticeship Hub Project Manager, and this is quite a new role across the integrated care system, and the purpose of it is to bring all of the organisations within the integrated care system together to have a collaborative approach to the delivery of quality, really high quality apprenticeships to Gloucestershire. So we work together as an ICS, we work very closely with the University of Gloucestershire, we've got a lovely relationship with them and the other colleges within Gloucester as well. We've got approximately 656 apprentices at the moment. However, I will say that count was in July, and in the last week alone we've probably added another 50 to 60 to that with the start of the academic year. Across the ICS as well, of course, the apprenticeship levy is our main source of training provision for apprentices, and we've got about 3.5 million in apprenticeship levy to spend. And of course, they, not being sexist, but they put a lady in the position to spend 3.5 million. I will very much take up that challenge. Give me money, it will be spent. Ask my husband, bless him. So one of our main objectives in the near future is to spend those funds, those levy funds, within our trust, so within the hospitals, the acute trust, and within their health and care, Gloucestershire Health and Care NHS Foundation Trust, the Clinical Commissioning Group, Gloucestershire County Council, South West Ambulance Service, and also the SMEs that are delivering health and social care. Sometimes they can be a little bit forgotten when we say NHS.
They are a key part of the chain of care for everyone. So as well as spending money within our own organisations, we're looking to filter that down via levy transfers to the SMEs. We've had an increased number of transfer requests in the last couple of weeks, just alone, which is brilliant. And we're all committing to those and transferring up to 20% of our levy to support those roles.
Fantastic. And as you mentioned this morning, and the Minister was responding to, there is a huge opportunity out there if the apprenticeship levy, the percentage of the levy that can currently be used for suppliers and contractors was increased. This is something I spoke about with the Chancellor 2 days ago in London. I think there are a number of people who are raising the same question with him. The more that levy can be used for other SMEs in the supply chain, the greater the number of opportunities available to young people. And this, I think, would be something that the Federation of Small Business would support. So I'm striding towards Sam, who is the Gloucestershire representative, to tell us how much that sort of thing would make a difference to your members.
Definitely, that would definitely be a help, because I think there was a feeling that the apprenticeship momentum was dying a bit with SMEs before coronavirus even happened, and it needed some stimulus, and maybe something like what you were talking about there would really help. But while I do have the microphone, I just want to say something about Gloucester generally, because I work for the FSB, but I'm also a Gloucester resident, and I've been working in the city just a couple of years less than you, Richard. I came here in 2012 for family reasons, and I came from a place which is probably difficult to mention in this room, Bath. And as well as slagging the rugby team off, everybody that I knew in Bath was saying, oh, you ain't like it in Gloucester. Oh, no, not after living in the Bath area. But it didn't take me long to fall in love with this place, actually. And I think it's very special. I think it's part of a special county. And I think I may have been lucky enough to be here at the best possible time, because I think the Keys has been remarkable. I think the Keys has instilled confidence amongst businesses of all sizes, as well as the residents. And I'll say that about the residents as well, because funny enough, I noticed Richard picked up on it twice. When I first came here and got to talk to people about, tell me a bit about what Gloucester is and what it's about, the amount of people that I sensed had a bit of a chip on their shoulder about Cheltenham. Oh, well, all the money goes to Cheltenham. If you want to have a night out, you've got to go to Cheltenham. All the restaurants are in Cheltenham. The best cinemas in Cheltenham. All these things. I heard it time and time again. I don't hear that anymore. And I think that is a testimony to the work that's been done by the councils, by, obviously it can't be political, but by all the officers of those that are interested in Gloucester's future. So from a small business point of view, I think it's a great city to be at. A lot of small businesses will be created at this period. We have to remember that. We're getting inquiries at the FSB from new starters, people who are starting businesses. My colleague Russell, who's sitting behind me, he actually is across the border in Stroud. He runs an office business park. He's had inquiries only this week. He's full. He could fill it with more. So there is something happening. That's not saying it isn't incredibly tough out there for businesses, but it's not all doom and gloom. And I do think the city's got a great future.
Well, thank you very much, Sam. And I think that feeling of increased confidence is one that we've heard reflected both by Owen during a difficult time for retail and hospitality, and also by Esther as a major investor whose plans could easily have been rocked by what's been going on, but is absolutely committed to this. So I think the combination of that confidence in business, the commitment of government and local government, which is reflected in what Stacey was saying about the joined-up nature of the health sector's commitment to growth, more employees. There are huge numbers of jobs available in the NHS and the care sector at the moment, should be quite encouraging. On that note, I'm going to bring in Jeanette from FlexiCare. Jeanette, just to say a word or two perhaps about how you see the care sector and the opportunities there, both with your business but in the county more widely.
Yeah, okay. Oh, thank you, Richard. Well, FlexiCare is 23 years old and we have 180 people working, fantastic people who battle their way through the pandemic. They're absolutely fantastic. Of those 23 years in business, 10 years of them have been in research since university 10 years ago, looking at ways we can engineer the care sector into a different way of working. And we're on the cusp of a really exciting development now in integrated care, with working with the care labs and the future of care. Have you heard of that one? Future?
Not myself, no.
No. Future Care Capital is the care labs. The principle is, you've got to have a good imagination for this, is that we're going to capitalise on all the goodwill that was shown during the pandemic. So we experienced massive levels of goodwill at our company. But if you could duplicate that all the way around the country in the form of a care lab, so here's the imagination, you have to have everybody working together collaboratively, primary care networks, doctors, nurses, volunteers, and just do something completely different. And we're on the cusp. I've got a Zoom conference on the 18th of September to sort of put the sort of foundations down. And I've been doing some voluntary work for the Leaders' Council of Great Britain and trying to help shape the health and social care sector for the future. But I'm very old now. I'm determined to see this through. So we've got huge opportunities for growth in Gloucestershire, and I think we've got about 20 people today, Richard. I'd like to have come away with 30 people today, a kickstart person, and then build, because we're going to be the foundation, hopefully, of the care labs. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's very encouraging. Another example of innovation coming from Gloucester. And I'm turning now, Polly, towards you, because several years ago, another of the cliches said about Gloucester was that we had a University of Gloucestershire that wasn't really in Gloucester. We had a little campus, but nobody knew much about what went on there. Today, it's a completely different situation. You've got a range of new courses there, a huge transformation physically of the impact of the university, whether it's on the sports side, on the creative arts side, or on the new amazing business course that you've got, and the Growth Hub. Will you tell us a little bit, Polly, about the Growth Hub and the changing role of the University of Gloucestershire in Gloucester?
Thanks, Richard. Hopefully you can hear me. So yes, we're very fortunate in our Oxtalls campus that in 2018 we had our marvellous new business school built, and we all moved in there, and that for the first time brought together our Growth Hub, which we'd had since 2014 on Oxtalls campus, together with the academic side of what we do in our business school academics. So we're the first university in the country to have a Growth Hub that deals with, I think it's up to 6,000 businesses now, actually embedded in our business school. So we won a Times Higher Education Award for our business engagement strategy and the way that our students have access to all of those 6,000 businesses, and we can facilitate all sorts of opportunities and experiential opportunities for those students while they're doing their programmes, and we hope to grow that and reinforce that. We're partway through that journey, and we hope to see lots of improvements. The Oxtalls campus, as you say, has grown. We now have, where the Growth Hub used to be, we now have a Health Hub, which points to a lot of the growth that we've had, and redevelopments and beautiful clinical facilities that we've got on Oxtalls campus. So we're very lucky, it's very exciting, there's lots of new developments going.
And of course, the impact of having much more activity at Oxtalls campus, more courses, is that we have more people residentially living in the city, spending in the city, and contributing to the growth, which in turn helps retailers and so on. So this is all about increased pride in the city, which I think we can all agree has been on the rise for the last 10 years. At the heart of pride in the city, of course, is the place where we're holding today's lift-off, here in Kingsholm, the headquarters of Gloucester Rugby. Gloucester Rugby has also had its training academy down the road at Hartbury University, but that is coming to an end. And although we can't possibly ask Lance Bradley today where the new training academy is going to be, we might ask him whether it's going to be in Gloucester, and how important is Gloucester to this great club.
Nothing like a leading question. Thank you for that, Richard. Yeah, well, no, I'm delighted to say we've got a new training ground being set up in the middle of Cheltenham. It's going to be state of the art. No, we've had a huge amount of support locally where we've been looking for sites for the new training ground. We want to have a world-class facility. That's obviously slightly difficult when we're going through the kind of financial setback that we are, but the support that we've had from yourself and from the local council, from a lot of local people, has been instrumental, and we're close to being able to announce where the new training ground is going to be, and of course it is in Gloucester. Gloucester. Where else could it be? So we're very excited about that. It's also, I have to say, this has been a great day for us because we feel very confident about the future of Gloucester. I'm not from Gloucester, not yet, but I've been here for a year. One of the things that surprised me when I came here is how, to some extent, lacking in confidence people from Gloucester who work here at Gloucester are. And one of the things I've tried to do over the last 12 months is to say, why would you not be confident? This is as good a place as any and better than most. Not just the rugby club, but the city as well. The view of Gloucester as a city from where I've come from outside of the city, I think is much higher than some of the people here have. So I think it's quite a big thing to try to turn around that kind of pride. And we're doing it here. When I came here, we talked about, why don't we have this level of hospitality? Oh, nobody in Gloucester's going to want that kind of hospitality. They only ever want a pie and a pine. Well, do you know what? They don't. They do want the fine things, and they do want to see, the best that there is, and we can provide that. And, it all goes towards increasing the confidence, and, we're pleased to be playing a small part of that.
Thanks, Lance. Well, it is very interesting. This question about quality and what Gloucester requires, what people expect when they come here and live here and so on. It is all about having a bit of self-confidence. And no one better, in a sense, to comment on that, if he puts away his iPhone for a brief moment, would be the former editor of The Citizen, Ian Mean, who's seen Gloucester in harder times. He's seen it change over the last decade. Ian, how confident are you that we're going to rise through the challenges that the whole country's got at the moment, but actually this special city is going to be able to thrive in the ways that we've just heard from a few people in different sectors? Ian Mean.
Very confident. I'm confident because I came here to edit The Citizen 18 years ago. I remember when you became MP, I said I'll give you 5 out of 10. I think that's a bit more now, but it's all about the people, actually. Gloucester people. I worked on newspapers, editing newspapers all over the country. This is the best place for people, and it's synonymous with rugby. Rugby is at its heart, and I remember as Vice Chairman of the Urban Regeneration Company, we looked at what Gloucester stood for, and we chose 2 things. One was the heritage, the cathedral, the other was rugby. I said to most people that rugby was more important. And then we went on a journey with the Keys, and I have to say I'm not being paid by Peel, but Peel have been huge benefactors to this city. They really have. Without Peel, without the help of the council and their support and the county council, the docks would never have happened, and of course the RDA. If the RDA hadn't existed, we wouldn't have had the sort of money. But coming back to your question, I think that we're on the precipice now. I've said for a long time the city centre has to come to life. I believe sincerely we need people living back in that centre. Empty retail has got to be made into homes. If you go to places like Brighton, look above the shops and look above the shops in the gate streets. They're just amazing. And we need to bring people back there. But I think it has turned first circle. When I came here, Gloucester developers wouldn't touch, and this is not my quote, wouldn't touch Gloucester with a barge pole. Why? Because of things that have gone on in the past. And luckily we now have developers like Peel, like Reef, who have sort of grasped the baton here. But change isn't easy, It's a bit like building a car. They say it takes 8 to 9 years to actually build a car. And I know Urban Regeneration Company, we lasted for 8 years. But it's only now, I think, we're seeing some of that some of those things coming forward. I'd like to see the hospital become a university trust in terms of its research, and I know that's something that they're doing. I think the NHS here have done a marvellous job, the care sector particularly, and I don't think people realise how many people work in that sector, as you've said. Amazing numbers of people. We have incredible schools, absolutely incredible schools, some of the best schools in the country here. So I look upon, I'm still here, I'm still supporting Gloucester, I'm on the board of the LEP here, and I try very hard to talk up Gloucester. Some people don't like that, tough. So, you know, what I think, Richard, here today you've done is bring together quite a lot of people. Some of them support you politically, some of them don't, but the main point is that they support Gloucester. And that's the key thing here. And well done for today.
Well, thanks, Ian. The key thing is the support of Gloucester and self-confidence and so on. Ian mentioned the high-quality schools that we got here, which are also important to developers. They want to see that people want to come and live in Gloucester because they can get great education for their children. So I'm coming towards the representative and I think the careers advisor at one of our best schools, the Denmark Road High School. Denmark Road has been changing over years. You've now got boys as well as girls. You've got lots of bright people getting great qualifications. How do you see the opportunities for them in Gloucester after they've left you?
So it's really been very interesting to hear that it's more of a strategic view of what's happening in the future. Some of the issues I'm dealing with going back into school is actually about exposure to work placements at the moment. So the NHS is here. That's one of the great places that you've got a programme of exposure and work days, but they're all on hold, unfortunately, at the moment. So I'm sorry if I'm going on, but I know it's a strategic talk, but I'm wondering what can help the young school leaders as they go through their journey of being exposed to different workplaces so they're ready to make informed decisions about their next steps. It's just at the moment, I'm looking at virtual experiences for them, and I'm just thinking, how do they prepare and make their own decisions about the way forward, knowing what the opportunities will be on the horizon right now, with the difficulties. Anyone got any ideas?
Okay. Well, thanks for that. We could have some individual conversations about work placements and so on. But I think what's encouraging, and I think what has changed over the last decade, is the way in which young women are now taking their place at the forefront of so many different industries. I've been visiting some of the aerospace, the world's leading aerospace companies here in Gloucester over the last decade, and the percentage of young women thriving and actually moving into leadership positions in some of those companies has changed. There's still a long way to go in some places. I'm sure Julie would say the same thing at Glasgow. The percentage of female apprentices on the electrical engineering courses and so on is still pretty low, but it is changing, and that's very important. The nuclear headquarters of EDF Energy here in Barnwood, they have 8 people on their management committee, and half of them came through an apprenticeship line, half of them through a degree, and there were at least 2 out of the 8 are female. That would not have been the way in nuclear power some time ago. So this is perhaps a good moment as we draw towards the end of this session to come to a young person in the audience to tell us a bit about yourself, what you've heard today, and whether you've got confidence in our city's future.
Hi, I'm Jessica Faulkner. I'm an engineering apprentice. Also do a degree with that as part of Glasgow and University of the West of England. I'm obviously really interested in engineering from a young age, and it was kind of natural to progress into an apprenticeship. I know everyone always talks about finishing school and going into a university degree, but after a lot of research I found that actually the experience that you get with a degree is much more with an apprenticeship is much more valuable than just straight through the degree. And I think everything that's been mentioned today is really promising, and apprenticeships, but also come through engineering apprenticeships. And I think that's something that I'd also like to kind of try and help with as I go through my career. But yeah, it looks so promising, and you know, I can't wait to see how Gloucester progresses.
Thank you, Jess, so much. That I think is, in a way, the best endorsement of what everyone in this room is trying to achieve, which is to make this city a better, more exciting, more dynamic place for people to grow up and then work in, and later on retire in with great health care to help them at that stage. And I think that as we bring this session to an end, what I hope is that the message that will go out there is that we've got people, whether in the public or the private sector, whether working in journalism or retail, in sport and in development, who have great confidence in the future of this city. Interestingly, only 3 years ago, Gloucester had the highest employment rate, the 4th highest employment rate of any city in the country. And we're not far off that position now. So when you look at the claimant rates, the claimant rate is the percentage of people who are on universal credit. Don't be misled, because those figures often conceal the fact that very many people who are on universal credit are actually working. They're just getting what in the olden days would have been called a bit of housing benefit or a bit of tax credit. Those benefits are all wrapped up into one thing, universal credit. And the vast majority of people who are getting UC, like my caseworker, are actually working and often in responsible positions. So our opportunity is to maintain that high employment rate, raise the quality of the jobs and the skills required to win them. And we're going to see that at Unilever, at Wolves Ice Cream, which is their factory for the whole country here in the UK. We will see them gradually bringing in robots and other things, which will reduce the number of people on the assembly lines, but increase the number of higher skilled jobs. The same is going to be true of Permali, who manufacture for the MOD and for the Department of Health. Gradually, that upskilling process, the way in which the college and the university can help people in Gloucester make sure that we win those higher paid jobs, is going to happen. So today, I hope we can leave you all, I hope all the panel are comfortable with leaving all our viewers with the thought that we're going to face problems. We're going to have employment challenges, but we're also going to rise to them, and there are people out there who are going to have very exciting opportunities for you. So ladies and gentlemen, will you join me in thanking our panel, Owen from Gloucester Quays, Stacey from the NHS, Ian from the City Council, and Esther from Reef for joining us for this session.
Occasionally I have to get the train, get my car, drive down to Swindon and jump on, or if I have to get on at Cheltenham, it takes 2 hours. That's not such a big problem. And increasingly we'll be able to say to those folks living in London, yeah, you're in quite a sort of tiny little flat there, you know, maybe you want to come to Cheltenham. And we've got great schools, we've got the Cotswolds, we've got GCHQ. I think Cheltenham and Gloucester will become far more attractive places post-COVID than perhaps even they were before. So those are just some initial remarks. Right, who wants another question for our esteemed panel? No? You're all ready to go? You've all got your job applications in? That's all sorted. Now, are we going to hear from maybe a cyber apprentice? Are you going to come and tell us how it is?
Sure.
Can you? Come and take over. You can take over from me and tell us about your experience. Why don't you sit here and I'll come and watch in the audience.
Okay. Well,
will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so first off, I
take your mask off.
Yeah, sorry. I am Taylor Watson. I currently study a level 6 integrated cybersecurity degree apprenticeship with Glasgow. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is that the correct title? There we go. So I currently employed at a company called Cybersecurity Associates, who sponsored me through also my level 3, because I did before this a level 3 qualification apprenticeship in IT infrastructure. That's me, really.
No, well, good. So why do you think that taking this route is going to make you oven ready for the jobs market?
Because I won't from how I see it, if I was to go to a university, what their syllabus and what they teach is this is from what I've got from my friends who are in university, is quite substantially different to what you would do on the job. Whereas if you were to get all of your knowledge you need in-house from a business perspective, you wouldn't have to. I think you're more so robbing yourself if in this time and age that you don't go and do it, because beforehand, when apprenticeships weren't as big and accepted, it would have made more sense to go to a university.
So let me ask two questions very quickly. So you will end up with a degree from UE at the end of it, notwithstanding you've gone via this route. Do you feel that your apprentice route degree has got the same currency as a university route degree?
No, because I think it'd be worth more.
Right, that's exactly what I'm hearing as well. Yeah. And compared to somebody who's gone just down the university route, how will your finances look at the end of it?
Oh, amazing. Perfect.
So when you see your university friends and you meet them in the pub, if they're still allowed to do that, the drinks are on you, are they? Is that
well, not at the minute because I'm 17.
Oh, right.
To be fair, drinks can be on me, but as long as I don't buy them.
That's great. And obviously, for young people, it is it's a nerve-wracking time. Frankly, it's a nerve-wracking time for people who aren't so young as well. You're immersed in this sector. Do you sit there and think, actually, do you know what? It's going to be okay. There is going to be this pipeline of jobs and opportunities. How are you feeling? How do you feel about life?
I definitely feel like that, and I'm not really worried at all, because working from home now is something which is so available and now recognised as quite easy to do for both a employee and a business side. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it will definitely open up the job market, because one of the limitations before seems to be office space. If your home is your office, that issue's gone, especially for companies that got to pay for the office space. You're doing it at home, meaning that they can, from the money which they take from the budget in that bit, that can be put towards better facilities, employing new people, or increasing training for employees, where I think you have to look at the silver lining, because, don't get me wrong, the times have been horrible, to say the least, but if you don't look at the silver linings, then you're robbing yourself of both potential and happiness.
Well, that's a philosophical note. I wish I could have spoken like you at 17. All right, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank everyone on the panel. So those of you in the room, those of you watching, thank you all very much for attending. Thank you to my panel.
There isn't a difference anymore in where apprenticeships can take people, and that it's just as valid an opportunity for their bright kids and their high achievers as anything else, really.
Now, you've had big success, haven't you, in the nursing field?
Yes.
COVID has put the NHS slap bang in front of us, and probably a lot of people don't realise it's the biggest employer in this county, in the country, fifth in the world, I think.
Yes,
you've had a lot of success there, haven't you?
Yes, we have. We've done really well. We've got nursing associates, which is sort of level 5 nursing, and we do nursing degree apprenticeships as well. The nursing, the health and social care option at Gloucester in our Oxford campus has grown like you wouldn't believe, and a lot of that is due to added demand from within the health service. So we've had a great deal of success with that. I think that's in part driven because we work very closely with our NHS locally, and we're very in tune with what they want and need, and also the professional bodies, Health Education England and so on. We work very closely with them at the sort of senior level.
Yeah. So what's the message to people looking into this if they're students and they're not perhaps quite sure what they're going to do? They live in Gloucestershire. what can you offer them?
So if you, sorry to direct people to the website, but if you look on our website, it's got information about all the programmes that we do. It explains a bit more about what degree apprenticeships and other higher apprenticeships are and the process through them. And if you want to leave your details with us, and if we've got opportunities there, we can pass those on to the employers that we work with. So there's a lot of information there. There's a lot of information on the Institute for Apprenticeships website, and also from our colleagues here. If you look, there are a lot of apprenticeships still available to people that want to take them up.
That's brilliant. Next, I'd like to ask Pat McLeod to talk to us. Pat is one of the best people I know in terms of the nuts and bolts of apprenticeships. It's not easy, to take on an apprentice, is it? You can't just ring someone up. It doesn't quite work like that. I've been involved in this for some years, and it's complicated, to say the least. And Pat's one of those people who, I remember some time ago saying to him, why don't you write a sort of A to Z on how to take on an apprentice? But, he's in charge of that for SGS, who are, of course, South Gloucestershire and Stroud College in Stroud and campuses in Bristol. So, Pat, apprentices, from your point of view, a bit like Andy, quite a bit down because companies just cannot afford to take them on.
That's the position we're in, Ian. Yeah, we're similar to Andy. We're about 60% of normal volumes. So as we go into this academic year, I'm anticipating that we'll start somewhere between 450 apprentices through the year, compared to 650 in a typical year. And I think, to me, the theme that we've revisited time and again today, and the most urgent issue on apprenticeships for me, is keeping that pipeline flowing to create opportunities for school leavers and college leavers who aspire to be on apprenticeships, and to make sure that we've got the talent pool from employers. As Gillian herself said, we are going to come out of this. There is going to be an upturn. Employers will be recruiting again. We just haven't got the clarity of when that might be, and it'll be different for different sectors. And one very pragmatic thing that the Minister could possibly do is look at programme-led apprenticeships with a relaxation on the employability requirement. Now, what that would mean is school leavers who've got the attributes and the ability to be on apprenticeship, but through no fault of their own, they cannot find a suitable vacancy. We could start them on the apprenticeship training, developing the skills and the knowledge, and as and when that person is ready and the vacancy comes up with the employer, we can seamlessly move them into the employment, and they can continue with the apprenticeship. And it could also, at the other end of the programme, be a safety net for those apprentices who are getting towards completion and are let go by employers, but we can complete their programme in the college. Now, there's been some relaxation towards this. They've said if you're 75% through, there's legislation going through at the moment to say we can pick those up. But there's a trap for the third years, just going into the third year of a 4-year apprenticeship, and they actually fall through a gap there. So there's a little bit of work there to be done. But the other thing that the programme-led apprenticeship would do, of course, is, again, as Gillian mentioned, all the issues that the 3 million apprenticeships were the solution to, the skills gap, the UK productivity, they're going to still be there as we come out of COVID. And if we can keep the apprenticeship pipeline flowing, 2, 3, 4 years' time, as these apprentices graduate, we're feeding that skills demand in the country.
Yeah. So you agree with the idea of Kickstart being developed into a proper apprenticeship?
Yeah, I mean, the steps the Chancellor has taken with Kickstart, with the traineeships investment, with the apprenticeship incentives, I don't think he could have done more. I think absolutely fantastic initiatives. We now just need a bit more clarity on how those schemes are meant to be connected and how the learner is meant to flow and progress through the traineeship, the Kickstart, and onto the apprenticeships. Okay, so what I would say is, whilst we would love the Minister to have that relaxation and allow programme-led apprentices, in the meantime, we're doing what we can to create our own versions. So speak to the colleges. We will find a slot for you. We're all running late information and guidance sessions, and we can probably find somewhere, be it on a full-time programme, from which you could transition to an apprenticeship when it becomes available.
For young people looking into this, What's your message to them?
My message, same as Polly, same as Andy, get in touch with the college. There'll be a phone number, there'll be a website with an info email address. We've all got information and guidance teams in place picking up inquiries every day.
Great, thanks. Kevin Harris. Kevin, I've known for quite a lot of years. Kevin is MD of Bamboo, big technology company. He's also head of Constructing Excellence, and you know, he's an engineer by profession, so came up through the apprenticeship ranks. Kevin, what's your view of the apprentice opportunities today?
Well, it's interesting. I was talking to Andy actually just before we came onto the panel, and I'm a lot older than a lot of people in the room for sure. And back in the mid-70s, late 70s, when I did my apprenticeship, I think it was a 5-year apprenticeship, and I got offered 6 apprenticeships, and I was able to choose which one I went for. And I had my mind set on one, and I remember ringing them up and saying, look, I'd like to come and be with you, and then let all the other ones down. How the world has changed, eh? But you know, apprenticeships for me, in particular, well, one, you don't roll up the debt like you do when you go to university, so I think that's great. But actually, we've got people, and one of them's in the audience today, Ben, who's just started on a cyber degree at the college. And for me, watching people grow and bring back what they learn at university or at college and watch it happen in front of you is so really rewarding for me as MD to watch them. And we've got 4 going through our business at the moment. And in fact, we've just moved into the college building in Princess Elizabeth Way in Cheltenham. We've taken over the top floor there. It's great to be around, and that vibrancy of youth is good.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't also forget that not everyone's a youngster. So, and I think just being mindful that actually apprentices for older people could exist as well, I think would be a really nice thing to have.
You mentioned Ben. Ben, would you come forward and could you tell us a little bit about your journey with Bamboo so far?
Yeah, so I joined Bamboo
Tell for everyone who doesn't know, what does Bamboo do?
So they're a telecommunications and sort of network supplier, and also IT. Have an IT company where we look after IT systems and phone systems, install them, repair them, provision fixed lines, look after mobiles. There's a lot that Bamboo does. They're very much fingers in many pies within the telecommunications and also the IT infrastructure of Gloucestershire.
So how did you start?
So I started as customer service in 2015, back when it was called Total, very briefly. And then we big rebrand to Bamboo, and I was customer service for a couple of years, and then I got the opportunity to go into IT, and I took that, and I've only really been in that for a year, and then I got this opportunity that Kevin and Lauren at Bamboo offered me and told me to look into it, and I said yes, definitely want to look into the cybersecurity apprenticeship, and I haven't looked back really. It's been the best. It's been a very challenging week.
When you left school, what happened?
So I'm 30 years old, so I left school about 15 years ago, and I went to college and ended up doing a course to get out to university, and I studied English for about a year. Didn't catch on with it, and it's obviously I was going to become a primary school teacher, so it's very different to where I am now as to where I started. I've just sort of naturally progressed towards cybersecurity really, and the whole IT industry.
And forgive me, you're saying that you're an quote older unquote apprentice.
Correct. Yes.
But I guess there are many people of your age and on that who've been on that career path.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've changed my job role 4 times in the last 5 years within one company, and since my professional working career, I've worked in restaurants, I've worked in language schools, I've worked in doing many things, and people at my age sometimes change their career 3, 4, 5 times. So people should never be afraid of changing their career regardless of how old they are, because of the apprenticeship scheme is so perfect for that. It's because it gives you that opportunity And it's
What do your friends think about what you're doing?
Yeah, they're proud, I guess, in a way. Surprised that I'm changing things slightly at the age of 30, although it's not old at all, of course it's not, but yeah, some of them wouldn't do it themselves because they're happy in their own environments, but I think it's good to challenge one. So yeah.
And what's the message for young people? A lot of young people watching this, probably still at school, probably just left, thinking what to do. Put yourself in their position. What would you do if you were back there then?
So if I was to redo it, if I was 15, 16 coming out, I would take every opportunity with both hands and really, I didn't maybe make as much of the opportunities I had when I was 16, 17, but I definitely would do that now. I would say there is a lot more opportunities now. I didn't know anything about apprenticeships or anything like that. I did the degree, went to Southampton University. It was completely different. And that was because I was told to do that, because that was the environment it was 15 years ago. And I'm sure there was opportunities, but we didn't know. So now there is more opportunities, and it really do make the most of it, because you won't regret it. It's fantastic, really. And just put everything you can into it, and then you'll reap the rewards.
That's brilliant. That's great. Great example. Before I just get a last message from you, any other sort of thoughts? Our friend at the back was you were brilliant earlier. Absolutely brilliant. Do you want to say anything just generally as a last message of today on apprentices?
Well, and loads I can say.
Can you just come forward and...
Is there anything specific you want me to say?
No, I want you to say...
Final words of wisdom. Okay.
Yeah.
So
you're the star of today.
So for anyone younger watching this, I would definitely say take the leap, because that's what I did. Because I had the choice: do I go do A-levels? Do I go to college? And the only reason, so I've spoke to my friends about why they didn't do apprenticeships. The reason why they didn't do it wasn't because they didn't want to do it. It was because they were scared. And no matter how scared you are, if I hadn't taken the leap and just gone for it, then I wouldn't be the person I am today, and I wouldn't have gotten as far as I've got. So the one thing I say to cap this off is, if you are young, take the leap. That's it.
Yeah. Why were they scared?
Because just a lot of commitment, really. Because also going from a school environment where you're in a way kind of guided through it into full-time employment, is going from that is, dare I say, baptism by fire, because you're going from a 6-hour-a-day to a full-time job where it's not like if you misbehave, you'll just get a detention or a verbal warning, you're gone, because it's employment, it's the real world, it's a very scary thing. But if you just believe in yourself, and if you just do what you're told, and also know that you can make mistakes, because you're an apprentice, you're there to learn. And the sooner you learn that, the sooner you'll be able to strive and go further.
Brilliant. And what's your ambition now?
So my ambition, my plan, per se, is to do this degree apprenticeship, because I'm on the same course as Ben, stay in the field, probably jump around job roles for about 4 or 5 years, and try to start my own recruitment agency, which focuses on providing knowledge and skills to people to people who are older, and to people from lower socioeconomical, and to people who are from ethnic, racial backgrounds.
Fantastic idea. Absolutely brilliant. Last message from you, Andy.
Yeah, I think just echoing, what Patrick and Polly were saying is that, yeah, we will get through this. COVID, we will get through this, but at the moment it's quite tough out there for young people because there aren't the job opportunities. So it's a message to employers, really. It's take a chance on some young people, because you get young people like Taylor here, and they bring a lot to your organisation. So yeah.
Holly.
Same sort of message. I would just add that I've got 2 people in my team are in their 40s and 50s who are doing an apprenticeship. So there are opportunities for all ages. It's very different now. And I think we are all hoping that we come out of this quite quickly. So what we really don't want is that people are taking decisions, whether that's young people or employers, that actually have repercussions way beyond any sort of dip that we have because of COVID. We want to come out really strong with all the skills and knowledge that we need.
I'm going to pick up on the point that was made about the step from school or college into work. And believe me, it's a huge transition and we don't estimate it. And we know the work that we need to do to support that step. It might surprise you that a lot of the SME employers who haven't employed school leavers before, they've got a little bit of trepidation as well as they go into this process. And I'd say invariably they are astounded at the calibre of the young person that we can put in front of them. And they're even more astounded that they see the rate of development and how those people progress. And that's why apprenticeships run at something like 90% retention. You cannot buy a recruitment service that will give you that retention.
Kevin.
Well, for me, I think just listening to Taylor there about his transition, and if I think about the apprentices we've got in our business, actually, I think they probably come to us and ask if they can do an apprenticeship, if I'm truthful. I don't think we've gone to them. So if you're in a business at the moment and you fancy doing something different, you can change a career within the same business. That's fine to do that. I think go and ask your employer, can I do an apprenticeship, and push them. And actually we've just got someone who's done that recently, and we've just signed her up for an apprenticeship because she came to us. For me, it shows that they want to do something different. But for me, that's really, really important. Really important.
Great. Thanks very much. Great panel. Taylor, Ben, absolutely brilliant examples of what we're talking about, isn't it? Thank you.
Absolutely.
President of Airbus and leads them in the UK. And there she is on the screen. Thank you, Catherine, for the elbow bump. And thank you for joining us virtually. I'm sorry you're not with us physically. But I thought we would start with you, Catherine, because at the heart of what so much is being done in Gloucestershire is really acting as mainframe contractors or subcontractors for the production of Airbus aircraft. And I've always been interested when trying to help sell Airbus products, mostly in the Far East, by the statistic that over 1/3 of the value of any Airbus is made in the UK. That is, so long as it's got a Rolls-Royce engine. The figure's slightly different with a different engine. But that figure is huge, and I think it's fair to say that the collection of mainframe contractors and subcontractors in Gloucestershire does make a significant contribution to Airbus. And of course you also employ quite a lot of people from the county at your plant and your offices in Bristol. So ladies and gentlemen, let's start with an overview of the current situation, which is a very difficult one at the moment, but hopefully with a much brighter future. Let's have that overview, please, from Catherine Bennett at Airbus. Catherine, welcome.
Thank you very much, Richard. And I'm very sorry not to be able to be with you in person, because I've never been to the Kingsholm Stadium, so I must come another time. And congratulations for putting on this event, and I hear it's been a great day. As you said, Gloucestershire, very important for Airbus. I know Filton is not quite in Gloucestershire, but we do procure from over 16 suppliers in Gloucestershire, and we have nearly 200 employees who live in Gloucestershire, so may that continue and may that continue to grow. So, and now just a little personal tribute, not to embarrass you too much, Richard, but I want to say on behalf of Airbus and UK Aerospace, thank you for all you've done when you travel to the Far East, fighting our corner, and truly has appreciated, turned into deals for us. So very real, and thank you for that, Richard. So just, I've got a few minutes. Richard just wanted me to touch on the industry as we see it. And of course, I know there's other panellists today, some of whom I know very well, who will also wish to comment. But of course, COVID-19 has been one of the gravest things that's ever hit our industry. Our CEO, Guillaume Fauré, talks about that a lot. 40% of our commercial aircraft business was affected. Domestic flights have dropped by 70%, 70%. I mean, who would ever have expected that? And of course, you don't need me to say, and I promise Richard I won't have a dig, but the quarantine issue is hugely affecting aviation, and let's hope that the health restores and that we can get people flying again. So my little comments today is good and bad news. So that's maybe some of the bad news. In response to the situation facing the aviation industry, Airbus and our supply chain have had to make some changes. We've sadly announced a reduction by 40% of our production, and that has also led, sadly, to a reduction in employee numbers across the world, and the UK has had to pay its share of that. We estimate that aviation will return to normal within maybe 3 years on what we call the short-haul airline sector, which is what I call the EasyJet size aircraft, but maybe worst case 5 years for it to return to normal. And just to say, as some of you may have seen in the news, of course, our factories have had to be ready for working in the COVID environment. Luckily, aircraft wings are quite large, so the manufacture of them can be done at quite a distance. Of course, our satellite's the same. And, I want to pay a huge tribute to our employees and our union representatives and our supply chain who've worked very hard to get that working again. Also, some of you may be aware, and I know some Gloucestershire companies were involved in this, the amazing story of the ventilator challenge. It's a shame that we had to do this, but a number of high-tech engineering companies came together and produced ventilators for the NHS. Quite an astonishing story. I know Renishaws, I know GKN, and a number of my colleagues in Airbus and other colleagues from Rolls-Royce were very involved in this, and we produced thousands of ventilators in super quick time. And I have to say, if you spoke to some of our employees who were building wings, they would never have thought they'd be making ventilators. So that was one thing that worked well in terms of how engineers love to come together and provide solutions quickly. So if I just move quickly onto the good news, because I know we're wanting to talk today about the future and opportunities for young people. Aerospace and defence and the space industry, we're a very long-term industry, so we have great opportunities. So the aircraft wings and satellites that are being built and designed down the road from you in Gloucestershire, they are going to be in service. Those aircraft are going to be in service for maybe 30, maybe 40 years. So it's absolutely an industry to get into. High-tech innovation is absolutely the name of the game, and the government recently produced an innovation roadmap to look into how we get our science base going and make sure that we're top of the world there. And that's really important for aerospace, and I'm sure we'll hear more about that from the other panellists, but we're very keen to see not only aerospace companies, but also the government investing in research and technology. And I know Richard has supported us on that. So we're hoping for some good news from the government's comprehensive spending review towards the end of the year. The other thing I would say to young people thinking about a career in aerospace and defence, digital data skills, absolutely the name of the game. So if you're good at that, if you're good at design, you're the kind of people that we want. It's definitely the future. So some amazing stories about the use of AI technology on wing design and servicing of our aircraft. We still have a shortage of engineers. We still have a shortage of pilots, although there has been some sad stories about pilots being laid off. But seriously, the whole industry as a whole, we need more engineering capabilities. Our supply chain, very important, and we're hoping that government will support the industry on a big campaign we've been running in terms of getting some long-term financing. So in terms of Airbus and our employees, we have a graduate training scheme, we have an apprentice scheme. We have had 30 new apprentices starting in Filton just this month. So often our apprentices is a wonderful story. You don't get university debt, you get paid to do your studies and you end up with a degree. So definitely worth thinking about as a career. Sadly, we're not recruiting at the moment, but please direct people to our website. Keep an eye on that when we will be recruiting again. I know myself and other senior management in Airbus are really committed to ensuring that we take on more apprentices, more graduates, and we're always on the hunt for new talent. And talking about new talent, we're really keen to be part, of course, of the sustainable aviation future. The Prime Minister made a big speech in Dudley in June about many things, but he actually talked about the desire to see the UK very involved in something called the Jet Zero Challenge, which is an transatlantic aircraft that he wants to see designed and built in the UK. Another one of his moonshot projects. And isn't it important, all of us, that we in the southwest of England, that you in Gloucestershire can all be part of that future? Thank you, Richard.
Catherine, thank you very much. I hope that some of those thoughts that you were expressing there will give young people listening a real sense of the commitment to the aerospace and space industries. And very encouraging that you've taken on new apprenticeships even fairly recently during the pandemic. Can I just ask a little bit about the last project you mentioned, because we haven't got, I'm afraid, Rolls-Royce with us here today. But I think for many people in the aviation and aerospace sectors, the difficulty of trying to make sure that we do meet environmental goals while still being able to fly all over the world has been a sort of major philosophical challenge for the industries and really the country as a whole. So how realistic is it, do you think, to imagine that the pandemic may have accelerated work being done on trying to produce zero carbon jet travel?
I'm not sure we can say necessarily the pandemic has accelerated it, because I think possibly other colleagues in the room from aerospace would agree that we'd already been doing, a super amount of work on that. But yes, maybe it's focused people's minds in a different way, Richard. You're right to say, the climate emergency is not going away. With the UK chairing COP26 next year, we in the UK sector want to play our part in that. And the only way to do it is to work with people, as you said, like Rolls-Royce, but also, very importantly, the fuel companies. So we're part of an organisation called Sustainable Aviation, and they're doing, again, another big bid for some sustainable aviation fuel solutions. I mean, it's different with smaller aircraft, such as the ones that potentially fly down the road from you at the airport. The smaller aircraft, maybe they can be run on alternative fuels, but a large civil airliner, pretty difficult, and obviously safety is paramount. So we just got to work together, and I often say it's our wing designers down the road in Filton who spend their lifetime designing more fuel-efficient wings to help more fuel-efficient aircraft. We've all got to be part of that future.
You alluded to the work done at Staverton Airport with Electrolyte and Rolls-Royce working in a partnership there. You're absolutely right, of course, these are tiny aircraft. And the concept of being able to fly on an aircraft which is run by electricity is interesting, but I'm guessing not going to be a part of Airbus's future at the moment. What more do you think the engine manufacturers can do to make their engines just much more efficient and ideally to explore looking at other sources of fuel?
Well, some of you may have seen some of the designs that have been talked about over the last few years. And, we don't see Rolls-Royce as part of the problem. They're absolutely alongside us as a partner. And some of the new designs that you may have seen are around the idea of a blended wing, which is that the engine actually would be part of the wing. But we can only move as fast as our nearest partner. So it's important that we all try and work together. And there's some projects. The government recently announced a project as part of the virtual Farnborough Air Show called Fly Zero, which is working with the Aerospace Technology Institute. And that's a good example, Richard, of how we're bringing together academics, Rolls-Royce, sustainable fuel companies and OEMs such as Airbus to try our best to work on that. But it's going to be a long time coming, but we're happy to look at sort of blended fuel options, maybe use of hydrogen and fuel cells, of course. So lots of opportunities for companies who want to invest in that part of the business.
Thank you. And on the innovation roadmap, I think that everybody in the room and yourself and others who are digitally tuning in, I think will be encouraged to hear that my last conversation with the Chancellor a couple of days ago, in terms of the innovation roadmap and future government investment in the technology research, I do sense that the government is more interested in that sort of approach rather than, say, the business of propping up jobs in sectors which are really unlikely to be there in the long term. I do think that his and our focus is going to be on the longer term, and it has to be about innovation and quality. That's where the UK still has a leading edge. Catherine, I'm going to invite the panel here now to come forward and join me. I'm guessing at this stage that you will probably want to escape to other pressing matters. And if that is the case, I just want to thank you very much on behalf of all of us for joining us today and giving us the Airbus overview.
No problem. Thank you, Richard, and best wishes for the rest of the day.
Thank you very much. Right, so that's thank you to Catherine Bennett of Airbus. Panel, would you like to come and join me up at the front for this discussion? We'll then be facing the camera in the room. Well, I think, Henry, you're certainly with us. Sean, you're certainly with us. I think we're okay. I think that's the panel. So, I'm joined here on this panel, which is a bit short of gender diversity. Absolutely. Chris could have had his kilt on, although that wouldn't necessarily have solved the gender problem. But that's only because one or two others who were to be on the panel, sadly, were unable to come at the last minute, including Victoria Haywood of Darkem, who was, I think I'm right in saying, Gloucestershire's first mechanical engineer, the first female mechanical engineer to qualify some years ago. So sorry not to have Victoria with us. Let me just introduce the panel very briefly. Chris Wilson, immediately beside me, is the Chief Executive of the Safran Group in the UK, which includes, of course, most well known to many people in Gloucestershire, the manufacturing business of the landing gear at Staverton, but also there's a big maintenance and repair organisation as well, and he'll tell us more about a couple of the other companies. And then beside him, we've got Paul Laerty from GE Aviation, the American group that plays such an important part in Gloucestershire Aerospace, and we'll hear more from him about that. And then next to him, of course, is Henry Johnston of Doughty Propellers, which is part of the GE Aviation group, but has retained its original brand name. And the legacy and history of that is something that any of us who've had the chance to visit his factory is extremely interesting, and a great sort of cultural legacy to build on. Also with us, although he's a little bit further away, but Sean, we'd like you to draw a bit closer and into the camera view, please. I'm afraid there are no prizes for hiding at this event. Sean Hammond of Poetons, the chemicals and coating company, fourth generation family business based here in Gloucester on Eastern Avenue. And just by way of background, when I arrived in Gloucester at the end of 2006, I shall never forget Anthony Poeton saying to me that although I had flown small aircraft and been an airline general manager, I knew absolutely nothing about manufacturing, and therefore it was time for me to go and visit all the major engineering and manufacturing companies in Gloucester, and it was as a result of that that I had the chance to first visit Safran and other companies here, and I've never regretted it. So we've had the overview from Catherine Bennett. Let me turn to Chris Wilson of Safran. Chris, this is a difficult time. Catherine mentioned a sort of reduction in 40% of Airbus manufacturing at the moment. How is this affecting your own plans and workforce at Staverton?
So good afternoon. Can you hear me? That's fine. That's good. Well, I'd echo exactly everything that Catherine said about the impact on our industry. We've seen our volumes go down in the landing gear because, she's my customer. Catherine's my customer. Airbus is my customer. Prime customer. 80% of my load goes into them. So we've seen exactly the same volume reduction coming in. It hit us hard through April, May, June, July. We've had to adapt our business, be able to cope with that. The government scheme helped us. The furlough scheme, we've been through the last 5 or 6 months with a third of people working from home, a third of people working in the factory, so the people that couldn't work there, so keeping whatever low volumes we had at that stage going, and the rest of people on furlough. So that's helped us sustain. Now, people say, but it's not really saved jobs because we're still having to reduce. Well, we have reduced. We've let contractors go, and we're having a small headcount adaptation that's currently going on at the moment. But the reality of the situation is, if we hadn't, that depth would probably have meant we'd be talking about 40 or 50 people more that would have left the business. Traditionally in the past, the volume would have dropped, you'd have adapted very quickly, and then over time we'd have recovered. So it's helped us in certainly getting through that process. Now, as we look forward, so I don't want to spend time on that because we're coming out the other end of that, and we are seeing, as Catherine says, the volumes are not going to get back to 2019 till 2019 volumes, probably for between 3 to 5 years, and we'll just see. It's all dependent on us getting on airplanes and flying again. So that means we can see a pathway going forward, which is good because Catherine talks about 40 years. I've been in the industry 40 years, and it's a fantastic industry. Apprentices and graduates would join what used to be Smiths. I joined Smiths, it's now GE. Doughty Props was Doughty's, it's now Safran. These companies are all interlinked. So whichever of the aerospace companies you want to go into, the jobs are going to be there. The digital jobs are going to be there. It's essential. It's essential we've got apprentices and graduates. We must learn the mistakes of the past, where in the 80s and 90s when we had big dips, I remember those, we stopped recruiting apprentices. We stopped graduate intake, and that caused a gap in our industry. Now we can close that gap because the digital skills and the digital approach will help us. So I implore people to come into the industry. It is a long-term industry. The aircraft that I first worked on a long time ago, some of them, they're still flying. Those airplanes, it's frightening, but they're still flying. They will still be flying. The aircraft that we're designing now, Jet Zero, it's going to take some time for that to come. But that aircraft, if we can design that, the 747 is probably a 100-year-old aircraft when you think about when the original designs were done to when it finished flying. So we'll see these Jet Zeros. It's going to be long-term. It's going to last for 100 years. People will fly. So I'm really confident, and we are investing. We're continuing to take our apprentices. We shielded and protected our apprentices. We didn't put them into a part of adaptation. That's the future, apprentices and graduates, because they are going to come into the business and they're going to make Jet Zero happen in reality. It might take 10 years, but other people that will be doing our jobs in the future who are remembering their start days the way I remember my start days with the industry we've got.
That is such an exciting commitment, I think, from one of Gloucestershire's leading aerospace manufacturers to the recruitment of young talent, because it will be, Chris, as you've said, through those young apprentices and frankly their better understanding of the digital world than our generation, that we're going to see the innovation we need to go to the next stage. Now, is that commitment one that you think all of the companies here share? This might be a good moment to pass the baton to Paul of GE Aviation. As you say, all the companies are linked in the sense that you do have major customers that you share. Sometimes you spend time at different employers. But Paul, how do you see it in GE Aviation? Are you continuing to recruit?
Yes, I mean, we had our apprentices here today actually fronting our stands because we see them as the best advert to actually show and explain and answer the questions that people want to ask when people come up. So we didn't have any salesmen or anything. It was those apprentices working the stand in essence. So for us, it was great.
I think one of your apprentices was Jess Faulkner, who came in and made a very powerful contribution to the discussion we were having on opportunities in Gloucester, with a very positive view of how the city is changing and what opportunities there are for young people like her. And it struck me then that that's exactly why aerospace is so important.
I mean, I am a bit of a sponsor for our apprentices, because when we do the Cheltenham Science Festival, for example, this year, unfortunately, we didn't do it. We ended up having all of our apprentices once again run those stands, because we see them as the people who project the enthusiasm, you know, not grey old guys who have been in the industry for a long time. It's those that actually do get the youngsters in who are really passionate, and they can tell what it makes and what the industry is opening up for them.
And Paul, tell us a little bit about GE Aviation in Gloucestershire, because you've got several different businesses.
Yes, it's GE Aviation is world renowned for engines, but what we do here in Cheltenham is what we term aircraft systems. So they're fundamentally computer infrastructures or power distribution systems. So the way we describe it is, if you think about the human body, we put the central nervous system in and we put in the brain. So, you know, that's how we manage in an aircraft. And if you look at an aircraft content, through the life of that aircraft, the systems content is most probably about 25–30% of the OE cost. But through the life of the aircraft, because it gets upgraded, software upgrades, new equipments, new weapons and such that go on to fighter aircraft, the actual lifetime and cost of the systems content can be about 50% of the value of the aircraft. It's a significant element. And for us here at Cheltenham and in Gloucestershire here, what we've ended up doing is having dual-use products. So we have a lot of equipment on civil aircraft, but we have an awful lot of equipment on military aircraft as well. So the F-35 program has been a major element of the content of the sites that I run, and we have about $1 million worth of equipment on each of those aircraft that get produced.
Does that give you a bit of diversity in terms of customer? I mean, Chris was saying that, of course, for Safran, you know, 80% of his business is with, from the Safran landing gear, is with Airbus. You're doing the F-35 as well, and I suspect some work for Boeing. What dependency does that give you on Airbus?
On Airbus, we're relatively low content on Airbus, but we have a big exposure onto the Boeing platforms. Our business base is about 55% military, 45% civil at the moment in volume production. And what we see is the chance to move technology across from the civil into the military and vice versa. So one of the key things that we've been encouraging the UK government to look at, and particularly to invest in Gloucester, is to say, how are we going to take some of the work that we're looking at, future programs like the Tempest program, where we've recently signed into that team for the campus, to allow us to look at the core technologies that we want to see as sovereign capabilities within the UK, and instead of having them as engines and wings and elements like that, how do we take some of the more computer-based, artificial intelligence-based programs and make them as sovereign capabilities, so that we're looking forward at what technologies are needed, rather than just dealing with the technologies we deal with today.
Paul, thank you. That's very helpful. We must come back to a couple of those points in a moment. But I'd like to bring in at this stage Henry from Doughty Propellers. Henry, I see you as the sort of phoenix that's risen from the literal ashes. Your factory burnt down not that long ago. You sailed off to Mitcheldean. You've now come back to Gloucester Business Park in a very smart new factory, which appears to be right on the edge of the old Hucklecote Airport, where the first aircraft with a jet engine hopped and skipped down the runway for a few hundred yards. How important, first of all, is this base right on the edge of Gloucester to both the heritage and the future of Doughty Propellers?
Hello, can everyone hear me? So firstly, thank you, Richard, for having me. Really important event, and it's great to be part of a great community here in the Gloucestershire region. I would like to talk about the fire recovery, but just a little reflection when I sit at this panel. When we were at the depths of the fire and the building had just burned down, it was the community that was the first responders at pulling around the business. So although we're not all part of the same organisation, and in some ways competitors. It was, help from Chris and Paul. Perkins also helped us out through the fire recovery. The whole community, the aerospace community, really pulled together. It is very, very tight community. So we compete hard, but also we do look out for each other as well. So I wanted to say thank you for that. Yes, it was really important for us to remain in the region. The technology that we use, both in the design and development of our propeller systems, and also the technical depth of all of our operators on the shop floor, because it's a very complex and unique build process, was so important, and actually was the major driver when we selected the site. We really selected it looking at where people lived from our employee base, because we wanted to retain those critical skills in the business. We saw it as fundamental to our success, and really was a very easy sell within the business as to, okay, well, you burn down your entire facility, you have a complete clean slate, and there was really no debate as to where it was going to be from that perspective.
That's very encouraging to hear, Henry, because I think one of the points that comes over in this panel is the importance of a cluster of major businesses and suppliers. And it seems to me that for as long as Airbus is fully committed to this country and our manufacturing, then that list of 16, I think, suppliers that Catherine alluded to, and the fact that you are all there to help each other, occasionally to poach each other's talent, but also to increase the skills, share the talent. I like that phrase from Chris. It does seem to me incredibly important, and we would be much weaker as a county and as a city if any one of you were to disappear and fragment what is such a core sector to the county. So it's really good to hear. Henry, looking at what your colleague Paul has just been saying about continuing to recruit apprenticeships, and Chris said the same thing for Safran. I know that Doughty Propellers is a smaller company in terms of numbers of people, but how important is it to you to go on, if you like, recruiting and investing in young talent?
Absolutely essential. I think I'll tell exactly the same story that my two colleagues to the left and as Airbus has said. There is a bright future in aviation. We do know that people will fly again. I say that we know. I'm very confident that people will fly again. I think aviation is such an important part of our global economy. But what's exciting is we have got the climate challenge. There is a lot of technology that needs to be developed if we're going to step up to the commitments we've all signed up to as countries.
What does that mean for you? Can you give us an example of how Doughty Propellers is adapting to a sort of greener world?
Well, I think one of the areas that we're talking about is what will the propulsion systems for future aircraft look like? And certainly, there's a lot of concepts that are out there, and well, I'm pleased that a lot of them, particularly on hybrid electric, have got propellers on them, or open rotors on them, which are very similar to propellers. And the ability to use electric motors and distribute them over the aircraft and putting propulsors in different areas is really exciting, but comes up with different technological challenges. We take our pitch change hydraulic oil from the engine, but if the engine's not there, we have to develop new pitch change systems. It's new control laws and how you manage the propeller pitch change during the flight. So a lot of development is needed, and actually a lot of new thinking is needed. So we see it's really important to keep refreshing our talent pool and keep the cutting edge coming on.
Yeah, that is such a good message that's coming through today, and I think anyone young in Gloucester hearing that at school, college or university is hearing that aerospace is going to invest in young people. They need you badly, they need your skills. And for those of you who are concerned about the environment as well, this is not a sector that's saying it doesn't apply to us. This is a sector that's saying we have to change, we're going to do it, and we're going to need your help with new skills to do that. I think those are both very positive messages. Sean, I'm looking towards you because traditionally, a coatings company has always played an important part in the aerospace industry, but of course in other sectors as well. How big is your dependence on aerospace today?
Well, again, thank you very much for inviting us, and I appreciate the time. It's affected us quite badly. The civil aerospace side of things, certainly within our group, is a major part of our business, was. And, but we are adapting, and it's quite interesting to understand our client base, because we don't always know where components are going into, what they end up doing, and we are absolutely involved in the ventilator challenge side of things, which again shows the engineering skills of this base within Gloucestershire, and surface coatings are a major part of an engineered piece of equipment, where the guys are talking about trying to reduce cost, weight, improve efficiency. A very thin layer of something quite clever can aid the process of the part operating correctly. So out of that, there's a lot of the military defence side of the business that we deal with, a lot of food and drug equipment, and again we have that engineering base in Gloucestershire that is able to produce equipment and produce the drugs. So we're not necessarily coating the part itself, we're coating the bits that make the bits, if you like. So yeah, we're having to diversify, but we have our apprentice scheme as well, and that is a great business to be in. We're developing new coatings all of the time, and we don't always know what they're going to go on to be perfectly honest, but at the same time we're trying to sort of proffer those to the guys that say, well, we've got this, maybe it'll help out with the process.
So that's a commitment to continue to invest in your apprenticeship scheme, which has always been there. You've had the adverts on Eastern Avenue for those with eagle eyes as you drive along. Yeah. And the business, I think I'm right in saying, did grow in terms of total numbers of employees by at least doubled over the last 10 years. Inevitably, that's going to be hard to maintain without some reductions at the moment. But I hope that your business, like the other ones we've just been discussing, will benefit from these longer term changes, because people are going to carry on flying and needing to fly. And of course, you've got other customers as well. Can we touch on the skills bit a little bit with all of you on the panel? Chris, you and GE Aviation are both partners of Gloucestershire Engineering Training, which was on the verge of being swallowed up and disappearing in 2008 to 9, and has since gone from strength to strength. It's now, I think, taking on about 3 or 4 times the numbers of apprentices for you and other businesses in aerospace, and not just aerospace. To what extent do you think that GET is a vital ingredient of the talent that you're trying to train?
Well, I think again, it's one of those essential partnerships that's been going for quite some time with GET, and our apprentices will go through certainly their first year there. I mean, I would mention one thing none of us have mentioned is diversity. And I've got to put a plea out there. We need diversity of apprentices. One really good example to any of the youngsters that are out there wanting to come into the industry, please come forward from whatever group, male, female, whatever. I think it's so important. Last year, our MRO Apprentice of the Year won the National Apprentice of the Year award, and she went through GTEC. She's actually launching with GTEC a new program around maintenance, because she wants to get into maintenance, machine maintenance. So,
and she's a Gloucestershire girl.
She's a Gloucestershire girl, yeah.
Well, that's a fantastic story. Is that the first time ever that an aerospace apprentice in Gloucestershire has won the National Apprentice of the Year award?
Well, ever I don't know, but certainly it's the first time I can remember a national award. It was a very special moment.
It's a huge achievement.
Business. But those skills are fundamental. It's the base skills. And working in collaboration with the GTEC, they're going to help us with the digital skilling at the bottom level that gets the start, the foot in the run. Because as you say, some of us have been around a long time. Computers filled this room when I was an apprentice. So computers now, we carry them around with us all the time. The digital world is there. The digital skills are essential. And working in collaboration with GTEC is a good example of where we get benefits with that.
Great. I'm conscious time is running out a little bit, but a quick soundbite from GE Aviation on the importance of skills training being available locally and whether we've got the right mix of courses to give you the skills you need. Paul.
We run 3 levels of courses in our organisation. One is we term Edison, so they're graduates who've come into our organisation, already graduated, and then they go through a higher degree. We then use the local facilities around our apprentices. And for us, without it, we would struggle. Talking about diversity, about 20% of our engineering employees are females. We need to get that level up nationally. Lots of big companies, ourselves and BE and Airbus and everybody are all been trying to attract females to the engineering community. And we've set up a role where we have this thing called Girls Get Set. And we've been running it for 10 years now. And it's got some national awards where it's all aimed at bringing females into engineering. And I have to say, those individuals who come in, and you've got several that moved across to yourself, they've been fantastic advocates for engineering first and then female second. And they've made such an impact. And I'm passionate about it because when you see them out there, they're the best advocates for this industry and for technology.
Paul, fantastic. Look, there's so much more that we could say on this issue, both of diversity and training, but I'm conscious that we've probably run out of time. And if I can try and wrap this all up, what we've heard today is of the commitment by some of the largest suppliers to Airbus in the country, aerospace manufacturers with a long history going back in some cases 60, even 70 years in the county, more still, not just in Chris's lifetime, and the opportunities for young people in our schools to come and get those extraordinary opportunities, and perhaps especially young women. So anybody listening to this session about aerospace, if you're young and you're interested and you're digitally aware and you want to pursue these opportunities, and especially if you're female, please be in touch with Safran, the GE Aviation Group, including Doughty Propellers and Pertons. And on that note, can you join me in thanking the panel very much for this session this afternoon? Thank you.